Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 4. Learning the ins and outs of devilhood. We're all finished, Rias. Naruto was wearing a mile-wide grin on his face as he waltzed into the clubroom without any sense of propriety and headed straight for the couch. Trailing in behind him was an exhausted-looking Issei. The young pervert was breathing hard and looked like he had run 12 marathons without pause. The contrast between the two couldn't be more different. The blonde bundle of energy and excitement versus the brunette who looked like he just got finished running 300 kilometers in less than a week. Where Issei looked about ready to fall over where he stood, Naruto was not only as fresh as a spring daisy but was retaining that goofy grin he seemed to wear almost 24/7. It really did show the others just how different the two were. As had now become an almost customary happening, the moment the young Uzumaki was sitting down, Kaneko, who for some reason was always in the clubroom, always crawled onto his lap so she could be pampered. Rias' delicate right eyebrow began twitching. This was also customary. I see, she took breath, then blew some of her bangs out of her face, causing her long, beautiful red hair to sway. That was much faster than I expected it would take. I had over 15,000 flyers in there, and you guys finished it within a single day. What can I say? Naruto was grinning broadly as Kaneko purred in his lap, his hands idly caressing her hair and ears. It was a very good thing he had been taught how to control his body's functions by Jiraiya. What is this woman doing to me? Resistance training, Gaki. You need to learn how to resist a woman's sexual allure or you may fall prey to seduction assassinations. That would have been much more believable if you weren't writing in that damn book of yours, ya perv. Or the girl's cute little rear pressing up against him would have caused a very awkward situation to arise. Thank Kami for small miracles. I'm just awesome like that. And what am I? Grunted Issei as he sat down and cast an annoyed glare at Naruto. Chopped liver. The perverted boy didn't know how anyone could constantly be that bright and cheery, but it was beginning to piss him off. No, wait, he was just pissed that the cute little Kaneko once again chose to sit on Naruto's lap and not his. He was a good guy, wasn't he? What did that guy have that he didn't? A lot of things, but Issei would be better off not knowing that. Well, Naruto's grin turned positively mischievous. I didn't want to say anything but, he trailed off suggestively, leaving Issei's head to slump down and a small rain cloud to randomly appear over his head. Said cloud of rain soon began sprinkling a light drizzle onto the brown-haired boy's head, causing his hair and shirt to get wet. Why was everyone always picking on him? Was it because he was perverted? It wasn't like he could help that. Everybody was perverted to some degree or another. So what if he was just a bit, a lot more open about his lecherous intentions than others? That just meant girls wouldn't need to worry about him having a secret agenda. What you see is what you get with him. That's not always a good thing, Issei. Here you two are. Akeno graced the pair with her beautiful smile as she set down a cup of tea in front of each of them. Thank you, Akeno-chan. Naruto grinned at the Nadeshiko girl as she stood back up and pressed the carrying tray against her bosom. Akeno smiled in return. You're very welcome, Kitsune-kun. You're not going to stop with that, are you? Asked Naruto. His answer was a giggle and a shake of the head from Akeno. The blonde sighed, but did not dwell on Akeno's nickname for very well. There were far worse things he could think of than to be called Kitsune-kun. At least she had gotten it right and called him a fox instead of a cat. Not that there was anything wrong with cats. He just didn't like it when people nicknamed him incorrectly. Naruto eyed the tea with a speculative gleam. Then he looked down at the girl nuzzling his chest with her nose and cheek, whose head he was still petting with both hands. He went back to looking at the tea. Just how am I going to drink this? Rias nearly snorted as the blonde tried to take one of his two hands away from the task of pampering Kaneko, only to have the girl snatch it back and place it on her head. She then looked at him with those large, amber orbs, causing Naruto to cave like a wet paper towel. As the boy looked on, hopelessly trying to figure out how he could drink his tea while petting Kaneko, Rias felt a sense of vindication. It served him right for getting so close to the rook anyways. They had just met all of 4 days ago and already the two were practically inseparable. He was a member of her peerage, not Kaneko's. Kaneko didn't even have a peerage. Since you've both finished handing out flyers, let's move on to the next step. Rias decided the best thing to do would be to separate the two by starting Naruto and Issei on the next part of the new lives they would be leading as devils. It was for their own good anyways. They needed to begin forming contracts and Kaneko already had several that needed to be completed. Really, it was for the best all around. She ignored the voice that told her she just didn't like seeing Kaneko hogging all of Naruto's attention. It wasn't like she was jealous or anything. No, definitely not. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. Alright, Issei cheered, clenching his hands into fists and pumping them in excitement. I've finally graduated from doing miscellaneous jobs. If our first task was handing out flyers in order to build our base of clientele, then our next one is forming contracts with the humans who have taken our flyers. Am I right? Naruto speculated. That's right, Rias said, pleased that he was so quick on the uptake. It was even enough to make her forget her minor irritation towards Kaneko for sitting on Naruto's lap and getting pampered by him. Akeno, if you would. Of course, Bucho. Akeno stepped into the center of the room. Naruto watched with interest as the raven-haired girl closed her eyes and furrowed her brows in concentration. The ground beneath her began to light up. A large circle about a meter or so in circumference drew itself on the ground, glowing a deep red. It was a very complex circle, with lettering of a language Naruto did not understand running alongside the outer layer. There were multiple, elongated ovals that spanned across the entire construct, 6 in all, forming what looked almost like an atom. About a foot from the outer layer was another circle. This one kept getting cut off whenever it ran into a line from the ovals. Running along the inner edge were several symbols, and located within the approximate location of where the line would be inside of the ovals were larger versions of the same symbol. There was another oval surrounding it, and within the oval was a 12-pointed star formed from the multiple elongated ovals that spanned the entire circumference of the whole circle. Located between each point was a symbol, and in the center of the star was one final circle. Naruto had seen many things in his life, and though he was not a master at the art, he had been pretty damn good at making seals after Jiraiya taught him during their 3-year training trip. Even with everything that he knew on sealing and all the seals he had seen, the Uzumaki had never seen something that looked so damn complicated. And this girl was making it like it was nothing. It was damn impressive. As Akeno began to chant in an unknown language, to him at least, Naruto decided to let his curiosity overtake him. What exactly is this? Rias turned from where she was watching Akeno to him. Right now we're engraving your inscription inside of the magical diagram. She tapped her chin for a moment, quickly thinking of the best way to elaborate further. The best way to explain it would be to call it the proof of our relationship, after which this magical diagram will become the basis for all the magical powers that you'll be using. Naruto wondered if he should tell her that he wouldn't need this magical diagram thingy, since he already had his jutsu, but figured that if they went through all the trouble of doing this for him, it would be rude to refuse. Besides, while he didn't really care to learn magic, it wouldn't hurt to have another trump card available. As the old saying went, it was always good to have an ace in the hole. Naruto, said Blonde, looked up to see Rias holding her hand out towards him. Give me your hand. The blonde nodded and stood up. Or he tried to. There was a bit of a problem that prevented him from actually walking over to Rias. Kaneko. Getting out from underneath Kaneko proved to be a bit of a struggle. It seemed the white-haired first year just did not want to get off Naruto. The girl's grip on him tightened and her face seemed to bury itself deeper into his pectoral muscles. She made the cutest mewing noises that nearly had Naruto caving in right then and there, and when she looked up at him with those eyes, those large, teary, amber orbs, the blonde just about died of mo. For the first time since watching Kaneko get pampered by Naruto, Rias found something amusing in the whole situation. Eventually, after many promises of more head-petting and pampering, Kaneko allowed the blonde to leave his spot on the couch, albeit, she had the cutest pout on her face. Even Rias was tempted to tell Naruto he could sit back down when she saw that expression that seemed to be the epitome of adorableness. Not that she would give in to temptation. Naruto was her servant, not Kaneko's, and that was that. On a side note, Issei ended up passing out from a nosebleed when he saw Kaneko's pout. Standing next to Rias, Naruto held out his hand, watching as the red-haired beauty took it in her own and turned his palm towards the ceiling. Taking her pointer finger, the devil who gave him a second chance at life began drawing a circle similar, albeit much less complicated, to the one that Akeno had made. This tool will allow you to utilize the magical diagram to teleport to your summoner, Rias explained as Naruto examined the circle. After a few moments' consideration, he determined that it would be easy enough to replicate this circle on his own from now on. Though he had no clue what he would use it for. Akeno, are you ready? It's ready, Bucho, Akeno nodded, you can start any time. Okay, Naruto, stand in the middle of the magical diagram. Doing as told, Naruto stepped into the circle. Almost immediately he felt the power being emitted by the glowing circle. It was similar to, but not quite the same as chakra. The best way he could describe it was that it felt more pure, or maybe more dense. It almost reminded him of Kurama's awesome chakra, just not as powerful. This magic circle is what you will be using to teleport to various jobs, Rias continued explaining. The summoner will have a similar magic circle from those flyers you passed out yesterday. The light from the circle began to glow more brightly and Naruto's hair began wavering as if caught in a breeze. Do you remember what to do once you get there? Make a contract with the summoner in exchange for granting their wish, Naruto recited. I got it, you don't need to worry about me, Rias. The blonde grinned as he gave the girl a thumbs up. I've got this in the bag. Rias could not help but be taken with his enthusiasm. She smiled, and said, very well then. Have a safe trip, Naruto. Light soon engulfed his vision. The blonde had to actually close his eyes, it was so bright. When the back of his eyelids darkened, telling him it was finally safe for him to open them, he did so. And promptly frowned. He was definitely no longer in the clubroom, that much was for sure. But the room he had entered wasn't exactly what he had been expecting from someone summoning a devil. What had he been expecting? Basically, he had been expecting some kind of satanic-looking room with a dark atmosphere and maybe an altar or two for sacrifices or something. That's the kind of thing satanic cultists had decorating their houses, right? What he got instead was a bright, cheery room with white walls, a cream-colored floor and pink, flowing curtains. It was a very girly room. The kind he would have expected from, well, a really cute girl. Turning around, Naruto found himself being met by said really cute girl, thereby confirming his suspicions about the person who such decor belonged to. The girl in question had long black hair in princess curls, electric blue eyes and pale skin. She was very cute, which Naruto would freely attest to. She also didn't look much older than 11 or 12. This couldn't have been the person who summoned him, could she? Excuse me, but I was wondering if you could. Mo. The girl interrupted him by crossing her arms over her chest and adopting an adorable pout. If Naruto had motherly instincts, they would have kicked in just now. I was hoping to get Kiba-kun when I summoned a devil. Naruto's right eye twitched. So this girl really did summon him then. Dear God, they were getting younger, weren't they? Still, the girl walked over to the blonde, examining him from head to toe. Oh oi, what are doing? Asked Naruto as the girl moved behind him and pinched his butt. He squeaked and held both hands against his offended rear end. What was that for? The girl completed her circuit and took a position, standing in front of him. There was a large smile on her face and her cheeks were stained red. You're kinda cute too, she admitted at last. Naruto felt like he had passed some kind of test or something. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. That's good to know. I think he was actually kind of disturbed by this girl. What sort of 11-year-old pinches people on the ass? Well, whatever. Time to get down to business, he supposed. This girl had summoned him after all. So, do you have a wish you would like me to grant? He trailed off, inviting her to tell him what she wanted. I want you to take my virginity, eh? Naruto stared at the girl blankly for several seconds. He then reached out with his hand and dug his pinky into his ear. When he was satisfied that all of the ear wax was gone, he looked back at the girl. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I don't think I heard you properly the first time. I want you to take my virginity. So I wasn't hearing things, Naruto murmured. Somehow, he knew this was all Kiba's fault. That girl had mentioned Kiba when he first showed up. It couldn't be anyone else's fault. Well, it could be Issei's, but even Naruto wasn't willing to place the blame with him this time. Either way, when Naruto saw Kiba again, he was a dead man. And speaking of Issei, he wondered how the other newest member of Rias peerage was doing. Surely, he couldn't be any worse off than Naruto was, right? Catch arc. Issei's situation was not much better than Naruto's. In fact, it may have been even worse. Unlike Naruto, who had enough magical energy to teleport due to his recently healed up chakra coils and being in peak physical condition, Issei's magic was practically zilch. He had absolutely no magic to speak of. This had caused him a problem when he was using the magic circle that would have summoned him to the person he was going to make a contract with. It hadn't worked. According to Rias, he just did not have enough magic to use a summoning circle. It was just another reason to hate Naruto. Not only did their cute little Kaneko, love sitting on his lap and nuzzling against him, he could use summoning circles just fine. Stupid, blonde bastard. With the summoning circle out of his reach for the time being, he had been forced to ride his bike to his first contract. This sucked big time because the person who had summoned him lived nearly 30 miles away, meaning he had to really haul ass if he wanted to get there before it was too late. Only his desire to become a harem king gave him the strength needed to carry on. Sweaty and tired, Issei had finally arrived at the residence he had been summoned to and rang the doorbell before waiting for whoever had summoned him to answer the door. He didn't know what kind of person would be waiting for him on the other side, but Kiba had said that he was often summoned by beautiful girls. Hopefully, the blonde prince's information was accurate. It would be totally awesome if he managed to get a hot girl as his first contractor. After a few seconds of waiting, the door cracked open. Nio. Issei blinked several times, having not expected that to be the first thing he heard from the person he was to be making a contract with. Then he sighed. Great. Not only was his contractor a man, he also had something as weird as a catchphrase. The door opened further and Issei began the necessary introduction. Sorry for intruding, but I was wondering, he trailed off, his eyes widening in horror. Welcome Nio. Standing on the other side of the door was what could only be some kind of monster. It was large, beefy, built like a brick shit house with muscles on its muscles and arms bigger than Issei's head and definitely not female. Not that it wasn't trying to at least look female. It was just doing a very horrible job of it. It was wearing its hair in twin pigtails with ribbons tied into bows. It was also wearing a sailor fuku uniform that showed off its disgustingly hairy legs, with a pair of white wings sticking out from behind its back. Issei abstractly recognized the clothes as a magical girl uniform, but that wasn't something he was immediately focused on. It was more an after-the-fact detail. The thing, for that's all it could be in Issei's mind, loomed over him like some kind of indomitable fortress of pink. I've waited for so long Nio. Issei, who was staring up at the thing with wide, teary eyes and snot dribbling down his nose, just barely managed to speak, such was his fright. Your wish. I want you to turn Miru-tan into a magical girl Nio. He really should have expected that, what with the cosplay and all, but for some reason he hadn't. In fact, he was so startled that he was knocked out of his terror of the monstrosity before him. I think you need to go to another world for that. I've been to another world, but no one has the ability to give Miru-tan magical girl powers. The hell, this thing actually went to another world. At this point, I have been forced to make a request from my enemies, the devils, to grant my wish. Enemies. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. This was not good, so not good. I want you to give Miru-tan. I want you to give Miru-tan magical girl powers NYOOOOOO. WAAAAAAHH. I'm gonna die. Yes, Naruto may not have been the luckiest guy in the world for his first contract, but at least he didn't end up with Miru-tan. You've got to be thankful for the little things in life. Right. Catch arc. Naruto walked into his first class much earlier than he usually did, which was normally just as the bell was about to ring. Several people looked at him as he entered, their jaws dropping as the foreign kid arrived to class early for once. Everyone knew that he hated class. Hell, he always slept in class. If that didn't say all my hate, then nothing did. Really, it was a wonder Naruto had grades as good as he did. It was a good thing that no one knew he was a top-class ninja. Taking a quick glance around, Naruto easily spotted his target, which may have had something to do with the fact that said target smiled and waved at him as if they were old buddies. He immediately began walking over to the person he had been hoping to see since last night. "Hey, Naruto-san," Kiba greeted with a smile on his Bishonen face. "How was your first OWCH?" More eyes widened as Naruto smacked Kiba in the back of the head. Several gasps were heard by the female population, which was quickly followed by several death threats for hurting their prince. Naruto ignored them. "You," the blonde hissed angrily as he leaned in to whisper to the boy. There was no need to give away the knowledge that they were devils accepting contracts to fulfill people's wishes to everyone. "You knew about Saya's wish, didn't you? That's why you gave her contract to me, isn't it? You bastard." "Ah." Kiba winced as he rubbed the large bump on his head. Naruto had a surprising amount of strength for a newly minted devil. "So your first contract was with Saya?" When Naruto's glare intensified, Kiba winced. "Did you know?" "What?" Naruto gawked at him for a second before scowling. "Of course not. Who do you take me for?" "Issei." When Kiba just chuckled and rubbed the back of his head, Naruto sighed. I think I've been scarred for life." "Yeah, Saya can be a bit difficult," Kiba admitted, sitting down. After a moment or two the spiky-headed blonde followed suit and sat down with a sigh. "Just out of curiosity, what did you do to convince her to sign her contract?" He then looked at the boy with a frown. "She did sign the contract, right?" "Of course," Naruto told him. "I gave it to Rias this morning. As for what I did," the blonde barely managed to withhold a shudder. "I gave her a massage." "That doesn't sound so bad," Kiba said. Usually, he had to do things that were a lot more vulgar in order to convince her to sign the contract. He had often wondered just how long he would be able to get away with simple kisses on the cheek and allowing her to do some minor groping before the precocious girl demanded more. "She kept trying to make me give her a full-body massage." Ahahaha. Kiba grimaced at Naruto's deadpan expression. As the bell for class rang, he made a reminder to give Naruto a list of possible females who may demand the same thing that Saya did. On the plus side, none of them were that young. That should at least keep him from getting hit again, right? "Catchart, Issei, I forbid you from ever going near the church again." The moment Naruto heard these words as he neared the doors to the occult research clubroom, he knew something was up. Deciding not to just barge in there as he was wont to do, the blonde instead leaned up against the wall right next to the door so he could listen in without being too noticeable. It sounded like Issei had done something wrong, again. "To devils like us, the church is considered enemy territory," Rias continued. Naruto could almost imagine her standing behind her desk, her hands pressed flat against its surface as she looked at Issei with a combination of exasperation, concern and disappointment. "If someone like you or I were to step into the church, it would create a major incident that could cause the small moment of relative peace between angels and devils to become strained. It's also a good way to get a light spear to the heart." Naruto smiled as he heard the worry in her voice. Even though her words may sound harsh to some, he could tell it was just because she did not want to see Issei get hurt. She really was a good person, caring for those under her as if they were a part of her family. "And don't go near anyone who has any relationship with the church. Especially the exorcists. They are some of the worst enemies our kind has. They have been blessed by God, so they have enough power to destroy a devil, especially a lower class one like you are right now. If a devil were to be hit by their divine powers, they would be completely annihilated, with no hope of ever being reincarnated." Hearing this, Naruto raised an eyebrow. That was a useful little tidbit of information. He had heard of exorcists before, of course, but most of what he knew came from listening to people talk about these exorcism movies that seemed to be popular among horror fanatics. And those were always about evil spirits, not devils. Naruto never wanted to watch an exorcist movie, ever. "This is very important. Do you understand?" Issei did not say anything. And if he did, it was not loud enough for Naruto to hear even with his enhanced sense of hearing. Even so, he could still imagine the perverted boy shrinking in on himself, looking absolutely intimidated by Ria's stare. Naruto had to admit, she had one hell of a stare. Era, a familiar voice said in his ear. Naruto sighed as he realized his time spying was done. What are you doing, Kitsune-kun? Just waiting for Rias to finish lecturing Issei, Akeno-chan. And listening in on their conversation, right? Akeno asked slyly. Naruto shrugged, not at all bothered that she knew he was spying on them. It wasn't like what he was doing was harmful. Something like that. Since Rias was no longer lecturing at Issei, Naruto figured they were done anyways and decided to make his presence known. Barging into the room with his typical lack of subtlety, the blonde greeted the two as he always did. Yo, Rias, he grinned at the redhead, getting a smile in return. Then he looked at Issei, his grin widening into one that was decidedly vulpine. Arrow debigame. Why do you keep calling me that? Issei looked like he was about to cry. Or maybe he was about to hit Naruto. It was always difficult to tell between the two. "'Cause you're a perv," Naruto stated in a cheery fashion. Issei looked like someone just shot his puppy, while Rias and Akeno began giggling at him. Don't worry though, the blonde shinobi patted the boy on the back, only to get his hand shrugged off. There's nothing wrong with being a lech. It's simply your way of life. Then why do you keep making fun of me for being perverted? Because it's fun. Issei's eye twitched violently. Rias covered her hand to hide her giggling. At the same time, Akeno coughed into hers. Not just to stifle her own giggles, but to get Rias' attention. Era, now that we've all had our fun at Issei's expense. Said boy looked like someone had just struck him with lightning, which was very apt, considering who was talking about him. I have an order of suppression from the Archduke. Naruto watched as Rias' expression morphed from its amused expression to a much more serious one. He raised an eyebrow, tempted to ask about what an order of suppression was, but decided not to, figuring he would get an answer soon enough. He had no idea how right he was. Catcharp, Naruto found himself standing alongside Akeno, Kaneko, Kiba, Issei and Rias later that night. The full moon was out, its moonbeams shining down upon them and casting an eerie glow on the abandoned mansion they stood in front of. It was here that Rias had led them to after receiving the order of suppression from that Archduke guy. Said mansion looked like it had once been a grand home filled with ostentatious decorations that would be par for the course of most homes where rich, snobbish people lived. Now it was rundown and abandoned. A derelict building that looked like it had been the victim of several decades worth of neglect. The walls were cracked and stained. Moss and vines had overgrown much of the structure. The windows were broken, yet the inside was too dark for even Naruto's vision to pick anything out. The place was truly in great disrepair. Listen up you two. Rias attracted Naruto's and Issei's attention. This will be important for you two to remember, as it's something that we will likely be called on to do again in the future. Naruto instantly perked up as he focused his attention on Rias. At that moment, she sounded very much like a Junin about to instruct her genin. It was actually kind of nostalgic. Rogue devils are underling devils much like yourself, except they ended up betraying their masters and went rogue. Most of them that strike out on their own act like nothing more than rabid dogs. And much like rabid dogs, they need to be put down. One of the laws of our kind is that if a rogue devil is found, they are to be destroyed with extreme prejudice. Naruto found himself nodding his head as he stored the information away. It was actually very familiar to him, as it reminded him of how shinobi villages dealt with their missing ninja. Missing ninja were not only security risks due to the simple fact that they had gone rogue, but also contained a lot of secrets within their bodies that could be used by other villages if they fell into the wrong hands. That was why they needed to not only be killed, but their bodies destroyed entirely. That made him wonder, when rogue devils were killed, did they need to take the head back as proof of the kill? And could people earn bounties by killing them? For a second, Naruto pondered the idea of hunting rogue devils for cash. It might be a good idea to earn money. He quickly discarded the idea, however. He understood the necessity of eliminating people when they became dangerous to the safety of innocents, but he had never enjoyed killing. I take it that's why we're here? Asked Naruto, gesturing towards the empty house. There's a rogue devil in there and we've been ordered to destroy it. Rias flashed him a pleased smile. Yes, that is it exactly. We've recently received reports that humans have gone missing around here. Normally, We wouldn't bother with rumors, since there are a number of humans that go missing all the time, but these reports claimed that the missing were all seen entering this house and never came out. That's normally a sign that a rogue devil has taken up residency and is luring humans in to eat them. She paused, then added, "It helps that the Archduke informed us that there was a rogue devil in our territory." "Sounds like a nasty business," Naruto muttered while Issei paled at the knowledge that there were devils who ate humans. "It is," Rias admitted solemnly. The group soon made their way into the house. The stench of blood clung heavily to the air. Naruto, with his enhanced senses, nearly gagged on the scent. It was only because he had grown so used to the smell of blood during the Fourth Great Ninja War that he was able to keep the bile wanting to rise in his throat down. Issei was not nearly as lucky. The boy's face was green and he looked like he might vomit at any moment. Naruto felt some sympathy for the kid. He had been just a regular person before he got caught up in all this due to that sacred gear in his arm. It really wasn't fair to him that he had to deal with this new lifestyle that he was in no way prepared for. Among those who seemed to have trouble dealing with the scent was Kaneko, whose nose was crinkled in disgust and her face took on a shade of green similar to Issei's. She probably had enhanced senses like Naruto did, being what she was. Naruto closed distance with her and absently handed her a cloth soaked in perfume. "Don't ask where he got the perfume or the cloth. Just go with it." Kaneko smiled in thanks as she gratefully took the cloth and used it to cover her nose. "Issei, Naruto," Rias said as they fully entered the mansion. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly in the empty hallway. "This will be a good chance for you to see how we devils battle." She paused for a second, then added, "I should also probably take the time to explain how the servant system works and what traits you gain as one." Issei scratched the back of his head in obvious confusion. "What do you mean by traits?" That question was all Rias needed to begin her lesson. "I've already explained the relationships between the devil, angel and fallen angel factions. The three-way war between those three factions left all sides exhausted in both moral and strength. A large number of pure-blood devils lost their lives, and there simply weren't enough of us to make up for the losses we suffered. Because of this, we needed to find a way to build our forces back. This was how the evil peace system was put into place." Issei gave Rias a look that said he had no clue what she was talking about. Naruto didn't either, but figured she would explain and thus kept himself from reacting too overtly. "Do either of you know what chess is? Isn't that, like, the European version of shogi?" asked Naruto, frowning a bit. Rias gave him a nod. "In a manner of speaking. It's very similar to shogi, but different at the same time. The pieces in chess are king, queen, knight, rook, bishop, and pawn. Each piece has its own unique traits." The group began searching for the wayward rogue devil as Rias continued explaining how the evil peace system worked. So far there had been no sign of the one they had been ordered to exterminate. Naruto was just surprised by how clean the place was. Aside from some overturned furniture and a thick layer of dust, there was nothing to show it was being used by anyone. Given that this rogue devil was supposed to be eating humans here, he would have expected there to be blood splatters or even a half-eaten corpse of two. At the very least there should have been signs of a struggle. For the same reason, each servant undergoes training in a different ability. Although they do not have many skills, they are very powerful in the ones they do know. Rias paused for a moment as she looked inside a room that had once been a sitting area. Nothing but discarded chairs and broken tables were there now. Because of this, the evil peace system has become very popular since its conception. It's actually gotten to the point where those resurrected as an evil piece are being used in a competition called a rating game between nobles. "Rating game?" asked Issei, a clueless look on his face. Rias placed a hand against a pair of large double doors as she answered him. This was the last place they hadn't looked. To put it simply, a rating game is essentially pitting servants resurrected under the evil peace system in a live fire exercise similar to chess. It's actually gotten to the point where it could influence a devil's position and rank within the nobility. Naruto scratched his chin as he read between the lines of her words. "Which means that, at some point, you're going to be expected to participate in a rating game, right?" "I'm still not a mature devil, so it's a ways off," Rias assured Naruto as she pushed open the door. There was a loud rattle followed by the creaking of hinges that had long gone unused as the door opened slowly. I still can't officially enter the arena. The room beyond was pitch black. Darkness beyond darkness that no amount of enhancements would be able to pierce clung to the room like a cloak. And what about, unofficially? Asked Naruto, his words making Rias smile. The blonde really was quite smart. Issei groaned as he rubbed his head. I don't really understand any of this. And what piece am I anyways? Naruto perked up. He was also curious to know what piece he had been resurrected under. Naruto, Issei, you two are. What a delicious scent, a voice interrupted Rias from saying any more. Everyone present turned their attention towards the darkness of the room they were entering. With the doorway open, some light began creeping in, illuminating a bit of the room beyond, though not by much. It's coming, Rias murmured darkly as she glared around the room. Noticing her look, Naruto allowed a kunai to slide into his right hand and held it in a reverse grip. But it's also mixed with something foul. I think she's smelling herself, Naruto said out loud, his words causing Akino to giggle while Rias and Kaneko smiled. Kiba looked somewhat amused, but was also sweat dropping at the very Naruto-ish comment. He had heard more than enough of those in class. Rogue Devil Visor, we are here to destroy you. Rias shouted into the darkness beyond. Naruto's eyes sharpened as his ears picked up a dull thud some feet away. He still couldn't see anything due to whatever had moved being covered in darkness, but judging by the rhythmic thuds that followed, whatever it was coming towards them. Something flew out of the darkness. Naruto and everyone who had combat experience, that is to say, everybody except Issei, tensed and prepared to react. They relaxed a moment later, though only slightly, when they realized what it was that had flown out of the darkness and now lay on the ground with blood pooling around it and staining the wood paneling of the floor. Issei did not relax. If anything, he began to panic. Corpse. Once again, Naruto felt a moment of sympathy strike him as the boy turned green and began to practically hyperventilate. It was clear to him that his fellow servant was in no way prepared for this kind of lifestyle. What a nice scent. It smells so delectable that I just want to eat you up. Perhaps when I do, I'll get the chance to see if your blood is as red as your hair. Naruto's eyes snapped towards the source of the voice to find that he could finally see who it was. A somewhat attractive female with messy hair, red eyes and no shirt to cover her jiggling boobs. Or at least, she would have been a moderately attractive female if it weren't for the fact that her lower half was anything but human. Naruto didn't know what kind of beast she was, but the lower portion of her body looked like an accident between a lion and some kind of arachnid. 4 large legs with pawed feet kept the thing standing and balanced. There was a prehensile tail sticking out of her hind quarters. And her entire body was covered in fur. Truly, she was an ugly motherfucker. Opie. Naked opie. Naruto face-palmed as he heard Issei's shout. He sees what had to be the ugliest chick in the entire world, and that's the first thing he says. Granted, her top half was, alright. Nowhere near as sexy as Rias or Akino, and she wasn't even cute enough to compete with Kaneko's tight little body, but it wasn't like her upper body was bad. However, that bottom of hers just killed it. It wasn't even that she had way too much junk in her trunk, just that the trunk she did have was the ugliest damn trunk he had ever laid eyes on. Well, Naruto supposed Issei wasn't known for being the most lecherous existence at school for nothing. There was a reason he had taken to calling the boy Deepening, after all. What an unsightly appearance. Rias crossed her arms under her chest. It suits you well. What a pretentious little girl, Visor snarled out. Naruto noticed that her human hands were holding onto 2 bloody javelins. I'm going to enjoy staining your corpse with fresh blood as dark as your crimson hair. HMPH, Rias smirked and took up a gesture of haughty poise. I guess it's true what they say about smaller dogs having a louder bark. Visor seemed to realize that she had just been insulted. She did not take too kindly to it. Why you bitch. Rearing one of her javelins back, she prepared to throw it, or maybe to close distance and stab Rias. Naruto didn't know. She never got the chance. Yudo. Got it. Kiba darted forward, his hands held out on either side, his body becoming nothing more than a blurry streak. Twin swords appeared within his grasp as he reached Visor, who switched targets from Rias to him. Well, Perhaps I should continue our lesson from earlier, Rias said as she watched the proceedings with a single hand on the curve of her shapely hip. Kiba had just dashed in at speeds that Visor had no hope of keeping up with, his twin swords flashing and slicing off one of her arms in a spray of gore. As the rogue devil roared in agony, Rias spoke some more. As you can see, Yuto is a knight, which focuses on incredible speed. Die insect. Visor roared as she lifted a foot to squash Kiba flat. The young swordsman did not move an inch as the foot began descending, for at that moment, Kenko jumped in, her hands stretched out above her head. Kaneko-chan. Issei shouted in shock. Don't worry, Issei, Rias said as she and the others not involved in combat yet watched as the foot tried to stomp Kaneko into the ground. It didn't, or rather, it couldn't, as the white-haired first year managed to hold the woman's foot above her head without breaking a sweat. Kaneko is a rook. As she continued speaking, the ground beneath Kaneko's feet cracked as she liberally shoved the foot she had been holding above her head off, causing Visor to stumble, and a rook's trait is insane strength and defense. In retaliation for getting shoved away like a 50-pound weakling, Visor's tail lashed out and Kaneko struck the young girl. Said amber-eyed cutie was sent flying and only stopped when she smashed her into a wall. The force behind the attack was so great that the wall actually crumbled and Kaneko was blown through it. That level of attack won't work on Kaneko, Rias said, smiling as she twirled a strand of hair between her fingers. Indeed, when the smoke cleared, Kaneko looked completely unscathed. Not even her skirt was scuffed in any way. Time for you to be blown away. Using the incredible strength granted to her as a rook, Kaneko shoved herself off the ground and was blasted into the air, her left hand clenched into a fist and held above her head. She looked kind of like Superman, or Supergirl, as she was way too cute to look like that Boy Scout with the penchant for wearing underwear over his pants. Like a rocket, the cute little first year crashed straight into Visor's underbelly. The power behind her attack had so much force to it that the much larger devil was blown off the ground and launched in a parabolic arc before descending and crashing straight through a wall. Kaneko clapped the dust off her hands, that bored look still on her face. So weak. Hee. Naruto smiled as he walked up to the girl he had taken such a shine to, and began rubbing her head. The blank expression turned into one of bliss as she leaned into his hand. You really are something, Kaneko-chan. Kaneko just purred in response. Still standing where she had been since the start of the battle, Rias' eye twitched at the scene. Can you two not do that here? We're still in combat, you know. Ah, right. Naruto chuckled sheepishly as he took his hand off Kaneko's head, causing the first year to pout. My bad. Ugh. Visor moaned in pain. How can a group so young be so strong? And now you'll get to see the last member of my peerage after you two. Rias decided to ignore what had happened between Kaneko and Naruto. There was no reason to get upset over it anyways. It's not like she was jealous or anything. Akeno. Of course, Bucho. Akeno was all smiles as she clapped her hands in front of her face. There was something seriously disturbing about that pleasant and beautiful smile. Issei felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Now, I wonder how I should do this. As a smiling Akeno began to slowly walk towards the struggling to stand Visor, Rias continued her lecture. Akeno is my queen. Why you bitch? Era. Smiling despite the insult, or maybe even because of it, Akeno tilted her head and looked down at the rogue devil. You're still so energetic it seems. I guess that means you can withstand more punishment. A flash appeared within the room. Then, how about I try something like this? Zeet. Akeno raised her hand and sparks of lightning shot from her fingertips, into the air, then descended upon the hapless Visor. Graaaaa. As a queen, Akeno has all the abilities of a pawn, knight, bishop and rook. She's the invincible vice president of our club. As Rias spoke, Naruto found himself paying extra attention to Akeno. He had noticed something off about her as she began zapping lightning at Visor. Akeno's breathing had picked up drastically, despite an attack of that level not being anywhere near enough to tire someone like her out. There was a heavy blush staining her cheeks as well, and she was squeezing her thighs together and shuddering in ecstasy every few seconds. Oh my! Akeno licked her lips as she stared at the charred body of Visor, the small flush on her cheeks increasing to a brighter red. It looks like you can still continue. I wonder how long you can keep this up. Naruto had seen that look before. It was a look he had seen a few times on particularly drunk women when he entered a brothel with Ero Sennin during their training trip. He would recognize that expression anywhere. Akeno mainly specializes in attacking her opponents with magic. Akeno, her breathing erratic as if she had just finished a 6-hour romp fest, lifted her hand again, a large smile on her flushed cheeks. The way she licked her lips was as freaky as it was enticing. She is also the world's biggest sadist. ZZZTTTT. GYYAAAAA. That was the sound of Visor being electrocuted again, and again, and again, and again. Akeno, it seemed, loved toying with her opponents. Naruto was strangely reminded of Anko as he watched the Yamato Nadeshiko work, God bless that crazy snake lady's sexy soul. As Issei shivered in fear from watching Akeno take sexual pleasure from causing mass amounts of pain, Kiba made to reassure him. Don't worry too much, the vice president is very gentle with her allies. ZZZTTTT. Grrrah. Issei shivered again as he turned around and saw Akeno blasting what now looked like a well-done steak with more lightning. Naruto whistled as he walked up to the pair. Is it wrong that I find Akeno to be extremely sexy right now? Staring at the blonde like he was something diseased, Issei quickly moved away, hoping he would not get infected by whatever Naruto had. Ha! Akeno sighed, her body shuddering with post-orgasmic bliss as she held a hand to her cheek. It seems that still wasn't enough to kill her. Issei's sweat dropped as he looked at Visor. She may not be dead, technically, but she was most certainly not what he would call alive either. I suppose I'll let the president have the final blow. Rias walked up to the thoroughly defeated Visor, stopping just a few feet away. Her was face blank, a perfectly composed mask befitting a devil of her high standing. Do you have any last words? Kill me. Very well then. Rias smiled, her eyes sharpening and turning a tad feral. Naruto would admit, it was even sexier than watching Akeno get aroused by causing pain. He must be turning into some kind of masochist. Damn that Jiraiya, it seemed some of his ways were sticking. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. As Rias held up her hand, what looked like a ball of black energy erupted above her palm. With an almost absent-mindedness, she held it out towards Visor and then let it loose. The effect was impressive. The energy slammed into Visor, creating an inferno of dark flames that, upon vanishing, revealed the rogue devil they had been sent to kill was no more. There was nothing left, not even drop of blood to stain the floor with. Naruto whistled. Now that was impressive, and he wasn't lying, though he had seen much more impressive battles and attacks, and if he could be so bold, felt that his battles against people like Nagato, Tobi and Madara were far more impressive, it did not mean what he had seen here was any less incredible. He had never seen something get so thoroughly destroyed to the point where there was not even charred remains. It's over everyone. Rias smiled at her peerage, let's go back and have some tea. Everyone began to leave. It wasn't like there was any reason left to stay in the dump of a mansion, and with no more reason to stay, no one wanted to continue smelling all the blood that Visor had left in the house. Excuse me, Bucho. Rias turned to look at Issei. What is it? I was just wondering. Issei began. You never explained what my role was. I have to admit, I'm curious to know what I am as well, Naruto said. Truthfully, he didn't think he would need whatever abilities he gained from his piece, but he was curious nonetheless. That's right, she eyed the two, I forgot to tell you what you two are. Issei, your role is. Issei grinned and rubbed his hands together, probably thinking he was something awesome like a knight or rook. Pawn. He was disappointed. You mean to tell me I'm the lowest rank there is? Issei began crying. Large streams of tears like waterfalls came pouring out of his eyes in mass quantities, running down his face. Strangely enough, these tears did not stain his clothes. How odd. There, Naruto patted the boy's shoulder. It'll be all right. Don't patronize me. Nay, Rias, Naruto said, I'm curious, what piece am I? You. Rias frowned, her countenance shifting from amused to uncertain. I don't know. What do you mean? Asked Naruto, now also frowning. How can you not know? The piece I used on you was very special. It was given to me by my older brother. She paused to gather her thoughts. It's called a mutated piece. It's basically a chess piece that was normal at one point, but mutated and became something else. It contains all the original powers of the original piece it was, but it's no longer a proper representation of that piece and is much stronger than it was originally. I see. So you can't determine what it was then? Rias shook her head. I'm afraid not. She smiled and tried to add some brevity to the situation. I guess that means we're going to discover what your piece is together. Naruto found himself smiling as well. Truthfully, he didn't care what his piece was. Naruto would not need whatever trait it gave him. All he needed were the skills he had honed to perfection back in his home world. He would be the strongest devil in the world regardless of what his evil piece was. That was a promise. Detbeo. Omake. A request gone wrong. Rias was sitting at her desk late at night, working on some paperwork. It wasn't something she enjoyed doing. Paperwork, that is, but it was something that needed to get done. As the heiress to an old and powerful clan of devils, and the owner of the city, it fell upon her to do it. It was just another reason she didn't like being the heiress to a powerful family. She could almost see why her brother was always trying to skip out on his paperwork. Exhaling a deep breath, Rias finished the last of the papers. Setting down her pen, she grabbed the last sheet of paper and moved it from the unfinished section to the finished section on her desk. The busty young redhead leaned back in her comfortable leather seat, her arms stretching up behind her head, causing her breasts to jiggle enticingly. Had Issei been there at that moment, he would have likely been blown straight through a wall by a nosebleed. Just as Rias was about to stand up and head to the room containing her bed, a bright, orange light filled the room. Blinking, she looked over at the floor, where a summoning circle she recognized as belonging to Naruto appeared. A second later said boy appeared within the single. Rias raised an eyebrow. Naruto. Her voice had him snapping his eyes over to her, a frantic look in them. Rias. Like a man who had just seen his life raft after being tossed into a raging maelstrom, Naruto rushed over to her. Rias would have leaned back as the blonde-haired Uzumaki placed his hands on her shoulder and began shaking her back and forth. Quick, you have to hide me. You have to save me. Hide you. Save you. Rias gripped the frantic blonde's forearms to stop him from shaking her. What's going on, Naruto? And why are you shirtless? She looked at him again, then blinked. And is that glitter? It was indeed. Covering Naruto from head to toe was mass quantities of glitter. His defined, male body sparkled and shone with each movement, even as thousands of tiny sparkles flew off him from his frantic movements. The blue-eyed devil looked almost like he had been shot at point blank with several glitter cannons. Never mind that. Naruto's panicked eyes flickered around the room, as if he were expecting to be attacked any second now. You have to protect me. Protect you. Rias' eyebrows furrowed. From what? From them. Rias was just about to open her mouth and ask who them was, but never got the chance. At that exact moment, the door to the occult research club room was busted open. Oh God, they found me. Rias blinked as several dozen girls, all covered in glitters and sparkles and glow in the dark armbands, rushed into the room. There he is. Let's get them. Come back here, Naruto-kun. You'll never take me alive. Quicker than Rias could actually follow, Naruto bolted towards the window. Seconds later, the glass was shattered as the blonde jumped through the window without even bothering to open it. After him, girls. It wasn't long after Naruto had left that the girls filed out of the room, leaving Rias alone. Said buxom beauty could only sit there, staring at the now broken down door and busted window with wide, blinking eyes. What just happened? Chapter 5. A Time to Fight. Naruto stifled a yawn as he woke up after another exhausting night. His body ached in places that no amount of healing jutsu could fix, probably because they were not actually wounds but the result of a night's hard training. Cuts could be healed, bones mended, muscles restored, but the ache brought about by hard work and good old-fashioned exercise could only be healed with time. It didn't help that Naruto pushed himself quite hard last night after watching that battle between the rest of Rias, Peerage and Visor. He was in good shape, but he wanted to be stronger, strong enough that he could be of help to Rias and his new friends. That meant working back up to where he had been before getting sent to this strange world, no matter how painful such a task was. As his mind began the slow process of waking up, he absently let his hands rub the curvaceous body of the beautiful red head in his arms. His thoughts soon turned to his training, what he was good at, what he was bad at, what he would need to improve on. Surprisingly enough, he discovered that his chakra control was exceptional, which was a nice change from his previously horrendous control. It wasn't perfect, but he wasn't going to become a medical ninja or genjutsu specialist, so perfect chakra wasn't necessary. Though he was hoping to replicate Ba-chan's super strength, which he remembered Sakura saying needed very precise chakra control. It would be hard, especially since Naruto did not have a clue as to how good his control needed to be. His ninjutsu was terrible. While his control over his chakra had become 1,000 times better than before, it was only due to the fact that the amount of chakra he could now use was so much smaller than what he used to that he had naturally better control. This meant that many of his more chakra-intensive jutsu were out of his reach. Considering almost all of his jutsu were chakra-intensive and required the reserves of an above-average Junin to even use, that left him with a very big problem. Thankfully, all was not lost. Naruto still had some of his more basic jutsu, including the ones Jiraiya had taught him when they were training. He only had a few that were B rank and below, but they should be enough for now. At least until he could begin making his own jutsu. It shouldn't be too hard for someone as awesome as him. If Sasuke had been able to make his own jutsu, then so could Naruto. Next he would need. As his mind became fully awake and cognizant, the blonde-haired, whisker-faced former Konoha ninja finally realized where he was, what he was doing, and that there was a very familiar person laying in his bed, again. How many times does this make now? 6, 7. He was beginning to lose count. Groaning, Naruto thought about what he should do. He could slip out of the room, go take a shower, cook some breakfast, and get ready for school, not something that brought about pleasant thoughts for the young man, or he could just stay where he was and relax, which was infinitely more preferable. After all, what hot-blooded male wouldn't want to lay in bed with a drop-dead gorgeous and completely naked female in their arms? It seems Issei isn't the only pervert around here. However, as nice as laying in bed with this beautiful, naked girl in his arms sounded, there were things he wanted to know, like finding out just why she was in his bed again. Rias, Naruto said. The girl didn't stir. Frowning, he shook her a bit and spoke more loudly. Rias, wake up. Rias moaned slightly as she drifted back into the world of conscious thought. Sitting up, once again heedless of her nudity, Rias yawned widely as she raised a single hand to rub the sleep out of her eyes. It was almost as cute as Kaneko, only instead of being adorable, her actions were incredibly sensual. It was like her very being just exuded a sort of cute and innocent sexiness that was such a natural part of her she didn't even know it existed. Rias was definitely what Jiraiya would call the girl next door type. Good morning, Rias, Naruto said softly. Rias looked down at him as she rubbed her eyes and offered a sleepy smile. Good morning, Naruto, she greeted, making Naruto smile in return. It left a second later as he remembered he was supposed to be a bit disgruntled. Or was he? Waking up with a beautiful woman was certainly not something he should be complaining about, after all. Still, it was a bit annoying to wake up with someone else when you know they had not been there the night before. Care to tell me why you're in my bed, again? Asked Naruto with a single raised eyebrow. Rias blinked several times as she registered his words before smiling. I had trouble sleeping on my own, Rias admitted, causing Naruto to look at her oddly. Normally it's fine so long as I have something to snuggle with, like one of my stuffed toys, but for some reason I just couldn't get a good night's sleep. I suppose you could say I was feeling restless. Naruto struggled as he tried to work through what she was saying. It wasn't that he didn't understand her words so much as he just could not picture Rias having any stuffed toys. She didn't seem the type. Okay, so maybe that wasn't entirely true. She was very grabby in her sleep, as he could attest to. He could easily picture her holding onto some large, overstuffed, human-sized animal or something as she slept. On a side note, it was a very cute image. Naruto dispelled those thoughts with a shake of his head as Rias began to speak some more. Then I remembered how easy it was to fall asleep next to you. You were so warm and cozy, like being next to a fire without the possibility of getting burned. I just couldn't help myself. Naruto sighed as he rubbed his eyes with a tired expression. What to do, what to do, what to do. It wasn't that it necessarily bothered him that she slept with him. He would admit that it felt nice to wake up next to a warm body. It hadn't happened enough back in the elemental nations. At the same time, as much as he liked Rias, he still didn't know her that well, and he wasn't the kind of guy to allow intimacy to develop without knowing he and the girl in question really did love each other. That one time at the brothel during his training trip did not count. It would never count. Curse that Jiraiya. Does it bother you that much? Naruto made the mistake of looking at Rias when she asked him that question. The blonde had often felt that Kaneko was the very definition of Mo, and that was true, but Rias had something special that Kaneko did not. The first thing he noticed was the way her hair fell down around her face. It gave the gorgeous redhead a strange aura, a combination of innocence and mystery that entranced all who laid eyes on her. Her bangs fell about her face, hovering around and over her eyes. Which were the next two objects on the list of things he noticed. He had been enchanted by those eyes the first day they met, loving their unique color. Right now those eyes had narrowed into a look that was somehow both remorseful and seductive. It may have had something to do with the sad frown on those beautiful, pink lips, which was the third thing he noticed. Or maybe it just had something to do with her breasts. She was still naked, after all. No, no. Naruto waved his hands in front of his face, as if attempting to ward off the look she was giving him. He may have some experience when it came to naked women thanks to Jiraiya, but he had next to none when it came to situations like this. Zero tolerance meant his will and fortitude quickly eroded. It's not a bother at all. I like it very much in fact. Really. Before he knew it, Rias was leaning in, her eyes growing large and sparkling with joy. It was almost as bad as the other look. Yes, really. Naruto leaned backwards, hoping against hope that maybe space would lessen the effects of her technique. It didn't, but that was mostly because he was lying down and couldn't actually lean back. I mean, it felt really nice. You know, holding you in my arms and all. He flushed suddenly. It was one thing to sleep with a naked girl. It was quite another to explain your feelings about something like this through words. It feels really nice. Rias' smile widened. It wasn't quite the cat that ate the canary look, but it did make Naruto feel like he was missing something. Catcharp. Rias Grimori was still smiling when she entered the student council room. She was feeling inordinately pleased with herself, and why shouldn't she? She had finally discovered a way to make Uzumaki Naruto flustered. She had been a little disconcerted by how unaffected he was by her nudity. Despite not having many, or any, of the modesty taboos that humans do, she was well aware of the effects her body had on the male and some of the female population. That this boy seemed completely unaffected by it bothered her. That wasn't to say he didn't like what he saw. She had clearly seen the appreciation he had for her body during those times she woke up in his bed, and since she always woke up in his bed these days, well, you get the picture. Several times she caught his eyes wandering over the swells of her breasts or tracing the curves of her hips with lingering glances. But his gaze was not like those of Issei's or other men. It was different. There was no other way to describe it. When he looked at her, it felt different than when other men looked at her. There was no real lust in his gaze, no desire to do something more to her than simply looking, or it was just so well hidden that she couldn't see it. Either way it felt like nothing more than simple admiration of her beauty. It was both flattering and at the same time disappointing. That was why she was so elated to have finally found something that affected him. While Naruto was unaffected by her nudity, at least as unaffected as a teenage male with raging hormones can be, he could not remain unaffected by the feelings of a woman. It seemed his entire personality, or a very good chunk of it, was built towards ensuring the happiness of others. He simply didn't like to see other people sad. She didn't really know if it was because she was a girl or not, though she felt it certainly helped her chances. Regardless of how unaffected he was by her nudity, Naruto was still male. All men were predisposed towards acting out in some way when dealing with a member of the opposite sex, whether that was acting like a chauvinistic pig or a chivalrous knight was dependent upon the person's personality. Naruto was definitely the latter of the two. Grimori-san, a voice greeted her as she entered the room. Rias did not even bother looking around the clubroom as she waltzed up to the desk where a girl around her age with black hair styled in a short bob cut and violet eyes sat. She sat herself down on the empty chair in front of the desk and greeted her rival with a smile. Sona-san. Sona Citri, a third year like her and the school president of the student council, looked at her over red-rimmed glasses. "It is very rare for you to visit me like this," Sona said as she used a minor application of magic to get rid of the paperwork that was stacked neatly on her desk. A snap of her fingers and a chessboard appeared within a magic circle that had Sona's family crest, the white side facing her and the black side facing Rias. She looked over at the other members of the student council and spoke again, "Please leave us." One of the members, the only male student among them, looked like he was about to protest, but a sharp glance from Sona had him leaving as well, albeit grudgingly. Turning her attention back to Rias and the chessboard, Sona made her first move. "Whatever you want to talk to me about must be very important if you had to come see me so early in the day." Rias studied the move Sona made as she carefully decided her own. "I don't know if it's really important, or at least not vitally important. I am simply here to satisfy my own curiosity," she said, finally making her own move by taking a knight and moving it in a position where it could take Sona's rook if she wanted to. "I see." Sona narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. After several seconds, she moved her bishop. "You are here about Uzumaki Naruto, correct?" "You know me too well," Rias sighed. Sona had always been good at reading her like a book. It didn't help that she tended to wear her heart on her sleeve unless required not to. "Yes, I am curious about one of the newest members of my peerage." "I am surprised you don't know much about him already," Sona frowned. "You members of the Grimoire clan are well known for being affectionate towards your servants." "I know plenty about him," Rias argued as she watched Sona make her move, grimacing as one of her rooks was taken. In return, she took Sona's knight. "Naruto-kun is very forthcoming when it comes to himself. I've even asked him about some things I probably shouldn't have, yet he didn't get angry at all and still answered my questions honestly." Sona studied her friend's expression. Rias wondered if the guilt she still felt at bringing up such terrible memories for her newest servant was visible on her face. "Probably. Sounds like someone has had a troubled past." "I really can't say." Rias' shoulders slumped. "Naruto's story is his to tell, and I don't want to break the incredible amount of trust he's shown me by saying anything." "A smart move," Sona admitted as she moved another one of her pieces. Rias frowned when she saw that her friend and rival was trying to trap her king. "If he is so forthcoming about himself, then why do you need to ask me about him?" "Because I've come to the belief that the answer to the question I want doesn't lie with Naruto-kun himself," was the immediate answer as Rias decided to use her queen to destroy the piece that had been about to put her king in check. "I suspect he would not even know the answer to the question I want to ask. And that question is, Naruto is on my brother's scholarship program." Rias frowned as Sona moved her queen and placed her in check. She placed a hand upon her king, but quickly discarded the idea to use it and instead moved her rook to shield it from the queen. Now, if Sona tried to take her rook, she would take her rival's queen. "I want to know why. And what makes you think I know the answer?" "You have information on everybody who comes to this school," Rias said without hesitation. "Surely, you would know something about Naruto." "Not as much as you might think," Sona sighed as she found her queen taken. She had extended it a bit too far into Rias' territory. An oversight on her part. "Though I do have a bit of information that you may find interesting. When Naruto was admitted to Ku Academy, the person who filed his papers was none other than Grafia-sama. My brother's wife." Rias nearly choked on air as she heard this. But why? That makes no sense. What makes him so special?" "That, I do not know," Sona said as she studied the board before smiling. "I only know what I just told you." She moved her bishop into position and leaned back in her seat. Checkmate. It would have normally galled her to lose to her rival, friend or not, but Rias was no longer paying attention to the chess match between them. Her mind was occupied by something far more important than chess. A little over 1 month ago, Naruto had joined Ku Academy under her brother's scholarship program. At that same time, her brother had given her the most unique mutated piece she had ever seen, and only required that she trade it for a single pawn. She got a mutated pawn out of the deal as well, which was how she was able to resurrect Issei so easily. Now she just found out that the person who had filed Naruto's paperwork to be admitted was none other than her brother's wife. Just who was Uzumaki Naruto? Cacharp, Naruto. Naruto. Kaneko, you need to wake up. A hand on his shoulder began shaking Naruto awake. Opening his eyes, the blonde wearily glanced around to ascertain his current location. He was in the clubroom, lying on the couch where he had elected to get some shut-eye before heading out to do some training. A glance at the person the hand belonged to showed a worried-looking Kiba. Kiba. Naruto yawned as he stretched himself out on the sofa. Laying on top of him, curled up like a cat, the lithe Kaneko began stirring. What's up? Something wrong. Issei's in trouble, Kiba explained in a rush. Himehime-senpai is already preparing a magic circle to transport us to his location. The only ones not ready are you two. That was all Naruto needed to know. Getting up on the couch, Naruto helped Kaneko to her feet and quickly brushed her down as she rubbed her sleepy eyes. A glance towards the other end of the room showed a silhouetted figure standing by the window. Even with her features obscured by the setting sun, he could see her concern and frustration. We're ready, Naruto told Kiba. Let's go. Stepping into the magic circle with Kaneko and the others, Naruto was transported to the place where Issei was apparently in danger. He was really beginning to wonder about that boy. The first thing that hit their senses was the copper-heavy stench of blood. It was a rank, cloying scent that burned the nostrils with its poignant odor. The smell was thick enough that anyone not accustomed to it would have gagged. Naruto ignored the corpse that had been nailed to the wall, and pulled out a cloth and a bottle of perfume, liberally spraying the scented liquid on the cloth before handing it to Kaneko. Much like during the rogue devil hunt, she was the one who seemed to be the most affected by the horrid stench caused by the bucket loads of blood that had been splashed across the walls like a mad painter throwing paint onto a canvas. Kaneko sent him a thankful look as she took the cloth and held it to her nose. Naruto absently pat her on the head as he took in the scene before him. Issei was standing, barely, his legs wobbling and looking like they were about to collapse at any moment. It was not hard to notice why. The tiny bullet hole that was leaking blood from his right thigh didn't look very pleasant, even if it was a small wound. Hyudo-kun, we're here to help. Era, you look injured. Priest. Issei looked at the group in shock. Everyone's here. Akeno smiled a lovely, terror-inspiring smile as she placed her hand on her cheek. Just leave everything to us. Her eyes strayed to the person who had likely been the cause of Issei's injuries. Now, I wonder how I shall cook this one, Yufufufu. Issei shivered and sweat dropped at the same time. Greetings, shitty-ass devils, yelled out a young man with short white hair, red eyes and a disturbing slasher smile. Judging from the clerical clothing he was wearing, it was easy to deduce that he was likely a member of the church. The psychotic-looking teen who looked like he could give Joker a run for his money in the insanity department rushed towards them with a strange beam of light in his hand. Kiba darted forward, meeting with the white-haired male in a clash of blades. They met in the center, their swords clashing, making a strange zapping noise as light blade met steel. A power struggle began between the two, each trying to push the other off. It soon became clear that the pair was evenly matched in the physical strength department. Neither seemed capable of overpowering the other. The two jumped away when it was clear neither would be winning this contest. Kiba had the advantage of strength with his reverse handling of his sword, but the white-haired boy could put more force into his push. You know, it's very rude to attack someone without even introducing yourself. You won't earn any points with the ladies that way. The white-haired boy looked like a retarded dog as he let his tongue hang out and his posture slump. Do I have to introduce myself again? I'd rather not give another introduction to more shitty devils who are just going to die soon. Why don't you ask the shitty devil who's nearly dead on his feet? If you survive long enough to, that is. As the two began trading blows again, Akeno blinked as she noticed someone was missing. Where is Kitsune-kun? Over there. Kaneko pointed over to where Naruto was. Akeno felt a bead of sweat trickle down the side of her face as she saw the blonde teen crouching in front of a petrified-looking little nun. Hiya, Naruto greeted with a wide grin, seemingly not at all bothered by the sounds of combat going on between Kiba and the strange white-haired dude. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. What's yours? The nun, a cute-looking girl around their age with blonde hair and green eyes, shrunk into herself a bit. My name's, it's Asia. Asia Argento. Asia, huh, Naruto blinked, then tilted his head. Kind of a weird name, but whatever. He held a hand out to the timid girl, who squeaked at the action. It's nice to meet you, Asia-chan. Years of instinctual politeness kicked in and Asia found herself giving her fellow blonde a handshake. Nice to meet you too. Oi. The white-haired priest disengaged from Kiba and glared at Naruto when he saw the blonde chatting up the nun. The hell do you think you're doing, shitty devil? Huh, you can't just go ignoring me like that. The priest ran towards Naruto, prepared to run him through with his blade. Asia, who was in front of the blonde male, saw what was happening and opened her mouth to scream out a warning. Before anything else could happen, a large burst of dark energy forced the priest to jump back, lest he be destroyed. The energy ended up hitting the wall on the other side of the room, then going straight through the wall like it wasn't even there before blasting into several more walls after that. I dislike it when people hurt my cute little servants, Rias said as she finally decided to get herself involved in the battle now that she had a clear shot of her enemy. All eyes followed her as she moved to stand by Issei, her hand still outstretched towards the priest and her eyes narrowed in anger. Especially someone with such a vulgar mouth. Then again, I wouldn't expect anything less from a stray exorcist. The only set of eyes not really following Rias are the happenings in the room at the moment were Naruto's, who finally realized that Asia was exposing herself. He took one look at her breasts, which were free from their confines, both her bra and nun outfit having been ripped sometime before their arrival, and hummed thoughtfully. We need to do something about that, he murmured, taking off his school jacket, wrapping it around the girl's shoulder and closing the front. Asia just looked at him surprised. Well, it's not a perfect solution, but it'll do for now. Thank you, Asia said automatically. Naruto gave her his foxy grin. Don't mention it. Anything for such a cute little Imouto-chan. Asia flushed at the new title she had just been given by this strange but nice boy she had just met a few seconds ago. Yeah, I've got a potty mouth. The priest was ignoring Naruto and Asia now that Rias was actually willing to fight him. She was the bigger threat anyways, it seemed. I'm so sorry about that. The church didn't like that I was so vulgar, or that I kept killing humans. So I was kicked out. But you know what I say. Fuck the Vatican. So long as I get to continue killing you shitty devils, nothing else matters. Your kind are the most difficult type of exorcist to deal with. The kind of exorcist that takes pleasure in killing us. Fuck you. I don't need to be told off by a devil. I'm just trying to live my life like everyone else. I'm not in a position where pests like you can talk down to me. Even devils have rules. Why the hell should an exorcist care about the rules of someone beneath them? Then why don't you just disappear? Rias exclaimed coldly before she fired another blast of dark energy at the priest. He jumped away just in time to avoid being vaporized. The energy sailed past him before blowing another hole into the wall, causing him to whistle at the destruction caused. Nice. I like those passionate eyes. Oni-san, you are the best. I can feel your urge of wanting to kill me. Is this love? No. I think it's a killing intent. Superb. This is great. I love the feeling of intending to kill and getting intended to kill. Despite the amount of bravado he had, it was probably clear to the priest that he was outnumbered and outgunned. Even someone as insane as him had to recognize how bad his situation was. Even without Rias energy blasts trying to tear him apart, facing off against 4 devils of unknown strength was not a good idea. Bucho, Akano warned, her voice screaming over the explosions caused by the energy blasts Rias was unleashing. We're going to need to finish this quickly. I can sense several fallen angels coming to this location. I see. Then it looks like I need to hurry this up. Taking aim once more, Rias began to rapidly throw ball after ball of black, demonic energy at the priest. With the amount of explosions that began taking place and the number of holes appearing in the wall, it was a wonder the house was still standing. It got to the point where even the exorcist realized his situation was hopeless. Suddenly, the idea of sticking around to fight didn't seem so appealing anymore. He quickly reached into his cloak and retrieved a vial of clear liquid, which he threw at Rias. The vial would have hit, but before it could, a blonde figure stood in the way, his left hand swiping at the vial to knock it aside. Rias' eyes widened. No, wait, Naruto, don't. She was too late. The moment her blonde servant's hand hit the vial, it shattered from the force. Whatever was inside flew out, splattering all over his face and upper body. Naruto hissed, a pained grimace set on his face as the liquid began to hiss and steam, eating away at the exposed parts of his skin. Naruto, Rias shouted, startled and concerned as her servant took a blow meant for her. And one that contained one of the greatest weaknesses of devil kind, especially those of a lower class. I'm fine, Naruto murmured, wincing as he felt the strange liquid burning the left side of his face. It felt like his skin was being eaten away by acid. Rias snarled as she saw the damage the water was doing to Naruto's body. She turned to the exorcist once more to give him a lesson in pain that he wouldn't soon forget, only to find the priest and that little nun that had been with him were gone. Damn it. Finally, Rias swore as she let her anger get the best of her. Come on you guys, we're leaving. We've already retrieved Issei, which was our primary objective anyways. Why did you do that? Rias was nearly in tears as she healed up the ugly-looking burns on Naruto's face and body. Of course, a good deal of those tears were as much from anger and frustration as they were sadness at seeing one of her beloved servants so injured. The red-haired beauty grit her teeth so hard her gums almost bled as she looked at the wounds on Naruto's flesh. They were truly hideous to see. The entire left side of the blonde teen's face had been burnt to the point that she could see his cheekbones and part of his jaw. In other places the skin was cracked and red and deformed, turning what had once been an handsome face into something that looked like it come straight from a B-budget horror flick. And it wasn't just his face that had suffered. The rest of his body had several patches where the skin was blistered and cracked. She saw one that looked particularly horrendous on the right side of his torso just below his armpit. It looked like it had gotten an extra dose of that holy water. All the skin in that area was gone and she could clearly see the bone and muscle. She could heal it, of course, and there wouldn't even be a scar, especially not when combined with the strange healing that Naruto's body seemed to be doing automatically. But just seeing her servant like this was enough to bring Rias to tears. It was even worse because Naruto had taken that damage for her. Why did I do what? Asked Naruto, sounding surprisingly calm as Rias healed his wounds. He didn't seem all that bothered by the injuries he had sustained, nor by her chosen method of healing. Since her form of healing required as much skin contact as possible, they were both completely nude, lying together in a bed. Rias was on top of him, her body pressing against his from above, her breasts pushing into his chest as their legs entwined and their hips connected. It was as close to sex as one could get without actually having sex. She was healing him in a private bedroom located within the occult clubroom. Naruto wondered why they had a private bedroom in the occult clubroom, but wasn't able to dwell on it long for several reasons, not the least of which was the body of his drop-dead gorgeous king on top of him. Don't give me that. Rias looked up from where she had laid her head on his chest to scowl at him, small drops of glistening liquid still leaking out of her tear ducts. You shouldn't have taken that holy water for me. For someone like myself, holy water would hurt but it wouldn't be fatal. For a new devil like you it's incredibly dangerous. You could have been killed. You can't expect me to just stand there and do nothing when someone attacks you, Naruto defended himself. There was no way in hell I was going to let anything happen to you, and I wasn't going to risk the small chance that it was something that wouldn't kill you. But you could have died. Better me than you. You. Rias clenched her teeth so hard that it actually hurt. After several seconds of glaring at the blonde beneath her through frustrated tears, her body collapsed on top of him. All feeling left her as exhaustion set in, and not just from their arguing. She rested her head against his chest, her ears pressed to his skin as she listened to the reassuring heartbeat that let her know Naruto was still alive. You are so incredibly stubborn, she whispered in a pained voice as she placed her hands on another one of his wounds. The most dangerous ones had healed now, leaving healthy, pink skin. Naruto chuckled a bit. So I've been told. This isn't a laughing matter. Naruto winced as Rias smacked his chest. Sorry. For the longest time, neither one of them spoke. Rias had to focus almost all of her attention on healing the rest of Naruto's wounds, and the blonde knew better than to speak out of turn. It required even more effort for Rias to heal his wounds than usual because she spent so much energy flinging balls of destruction at that priest. Perhaps it had not been her best idea to not dispose of the priest immediately, but she had been angry at him for hurting one of her servants, and scaring the crap out of exorcists was very therapeutic. "I am sorry that I upset you," Naruto said after a while, speaking in a very soft voice. Rias did not raise her head, she was too tired for that, but she did squeeze his hand to let him know she was listening. "But you have to understand, I can't let you get hurt. I can't. Seeing my friends get hurt and not doing anything to stop it when I know I can causes more pain for me than anything else in this world. I could never forgive myself if I let you get hurt when I had the power to protect you." His mind went back to Neji, one of many friends he failed to save. He would not let that happen again. Never again. "How do you think I feel?" asked Rias, lifting herself up with some effort so she could look at him. "Don't you realize that I feel the same way? Naruto, you're not just one of my servants. You, Akeno, Kiba, Kaneko and Issei, you're my friends. I would never be able to live with myself if you got hurt on my account. Then I guess we're stuck. I understand how you feel, but I can't stand by and watch while you get hurt so long as I can stop it. I'm just not capable of that." Rias felt like groaning, but she was far too tired to commit such a desire into action. "You're going to be stubborn about this, aren't you?" She closed her eyes, thereby missing Naruto's nod. "Even if you were to order me not to, I would disobey you in a heartbeat if it meant keeping you or the others from harm." Strangely enough, even though Rias heard his words, a good part of her focused on his use of "you and the others." For some reason she felt a bit sad that he had included everyone else. She didn't know why that was. She should be happy that her peerage had become so important to him, but she could not deny that some part of her, one that she refused to acknowledge even to herself, wished that statement had been made solely for her. At least a part of her wished that. The other part wished he wouldn't say things like that at all. The idea of him getting hurt protecting her bothered her more than she cared to admit. Too tired to do anything more, Rias wrapped her arms around Naruto's muscular body and pulled herself as close to him as possible. Her breasts mashed up against his chest, and she could feel his powerful abs and pectorals ripple underneath her. She ignored the pleasant tingle this caused, too burnt out to think on what it might mean, and simply let exhaustion begin to get the best of her. "Just promise me you won't get hurt like that anymore," she whispered to him pleadingly. Her eyes drooped closed as she spoke. She could feel her mind slipping as the Sandman came to claim her. "I can't promise that," Naruto replied, his tone just as soft. "But I will promise to be more careful from now on. How does that sound?" Rias didn't respond. She was already asleep. Catch-up. The next morning Naruto woke up to find himself still sleeping on the bed in the back room of the occult research clubroom. Sunlight was streaming in through the parted curtains of the room's sole window, illuminating the dark red ceiling above. He could only thank the ramen gods that the window was nowhere near the bed. He hated waking up to the sun in his face. Maybe he should think about living here instead of his apartment. Rias was also there, still sleeping peacefully on top of him, her arms wrapped loosely around his side. Acting with both care and gentleness, Naruto rolled Rias off of him and onto her back. Her arms and legs flopped a bit, as did her breasts, but otherwise she did not move. She must have really exhausted herself last night. Generally, the few attempts Naruto made at extricating himself from her iron grip when she slept ended with her simply holding him that much tighter. For her to not even seem to recognize she was losing her heat source meant she was well and truly exhausted. Just how much energy did she expend last night? Rolling over so that he was lying on his side, Naruto looked at Rias. Her hair was splayed out over the pillow and bed in a wild, untamed mess. Her eyes were closed, though Naruto could see them occasionally moving behind her eyelids, and her mouth was parted slightly as she rhythmically breathed in and out. Taking note of her breathing unfortunately brought attention to her chest. Her two large breasts stood out proudly on her chest like mountains with pink, snow-capped peaks. For just a second, Naruto found himself mesmerized by the way her breasts jiggled with each inhale and exhale of oxygen and carbon dioxide. He shook his head. He was not a pervert. At least not completely. Nowhere near Issei's or Jiraiya's level of perversion at least. He was just a healthy teenage male with a good deal of hormones and a large libido, same as any other male in his age. Keep telling yourself that, Naruto. The bed creaked just a bit as he moved his legs over the side and stood up. Rias still did not wake up, so Naruto decided to tuck her in. Placing his left arm under her knees, he lifted her legs into the air, pulled the covers she was laying on top of back, then up. He set her legs back down and straightened them out, then pulled the covers over her. He let the sheets rest just above the swell of her breasts and below her collarbone, ran his hand soothingly through her hair, then straightened back up. After putting on a pair of pants, Naruto left the room and walked into the main clubroom. It was not much of a surprise when he saw everyone was still there. Issei had been pretty injured as well. It was only logical he would stay there while Akeno healed him. The rest were all very close to Rias, and had probably decided to stick around because she was. They were all asleep at the moment. Issei was laying on the couch where Akeno had been healing his wounds. Akeno had fallen asleep with half her body on top of him. It didn't look very comfortable, but Naruto could only imagine how amusing it would be to see Issei wake up like that. Kiba had taken to using the floor as his bed and was laying on his back with his hands behind his head. Kaneko had curled up into a tiny ball on the chair. It was Kaneko that Naruto walked up to. Kneeling down, he placed a hand on her shoulder and began to shake her awake. Kaneko-chan. Kaneko-chan. Watching the first year wake up brought with it an entirely new level of mo that Naruto did not know existed. Unfurling herself like some kind of cat, the white-haired cutie stretched out her arms and legs, twisting her lithe body this way and that as she yawned widely. It was so incredibly adorable that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed young man nearly squealed like some kind of fangirl. He was not a fangirl though. Or a fanboy for that matter. Nope, definitely not. So he did not squeal. He did let out a small squeak though. After stretching herself out, Kaneko then sat up, her legs tucked under her rear as she rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Then she saw Naruto. Her eyes widened. Naruto didn't even have enough time to say good morning before the girl was leaning into him, her arms engulfing his torso as she buried her face in his chest. Kaneko-chan, I'm glad you're okay. Realizing that the girl had probably been as worried about his safety as Rias was made Naruto feel like an insensitive prick. Now he had not only worried the girl who was quite possibly the most important person in the world to him, but he had also worried his cute little Kahai who had easily taken the number 2 spot for the most precious people position. What kind of jerk worried his friends so much? Apparently he did. Not being able to really do anything else, Naruto returned the hug, burying his face in her hair as he ran a hand down the back of her head. He found it kind of strange that he was being so affectionate. Back in the elemental nations he had almost never shown this much affection for others with a few exceptions. It had only been after the first 3 days of being with this group that he realized he was acting this way because he had always wanted to act like this around Sakura, but had never been able to. Namely because that girl would have punched him through a wall with her insane strength if he actually hugged her. This desire for physical contact that he'd had since he was a child had only grown with time, but had rarely ever been realized back in the elemental nations. He could count the number of times he'd had physical intimacy on both hands and have fingers left over. Compared to most people who received hugs and kisses from moms and dads and friends and girlfriends for most of their life, that wasn't much physical affection. And on that note, he still refused to count that one time during his training trip with Jiraiya. Naruto wondered if he was acting out on his desires because of Rias. The girl was certainly one of the most cuddly people he had ever met. She had no trouble sneaking into his room in the middle of the night, stripping naked and snuggling with him like he was some kind of oversized teddy bear. In this instance, Naruto was actually thankful to Jiraiya. If there was one thing the perv had done right, it was help him become immune, sort of, to female nudity. Then again, maybe he was just different now. It had been a long time since he thought about Sakura in that way. He had stopped lusting after her long before coming to this world. Perhaps he was just a more mature person now. Yeah, right, of course, he could just be overthinking this, which was strange because he didn't like to think much, if at all. Thinking hurt his brain, and he had too little of that to waste it on thinking about pointless things like this. Nay, Kaneko-chan, wanna come with me and grab some food for the others? Kaneko did not release her hold on him, but she did loosen it so she could look up. A second passed, then two. Finally, she nodded. Okay, great. Naruto stood up, taking the first year with him. Then let's get going. They began making their way out of the room, arm in arm. As they walked, Kaneko looked up at Naruto. I want Daifuku. A small bead of sweat ran down the side of Naruto's forehead. You really like sweets, don't you? After a second he beamed at Kaneko. Well, all right then. Our first stop will be the sweet shop. He paused. Holy shit, I just rapped like Killer Bee. A mild wide grin split his face. I'm awesome. Kaneko blinked. Once. Killer who? Never mind. Kaneko's cheeks were just a teensy bit red as she walked along the sidewalk with Naruto, both her arms wrapped around one of his. Their feet made light tapping noises along the cement as said appendages carried them to their destination. The sun was now out, though it was still fairly early in the morning. As Sol's rays radiated down on Terra and coruscated off the asphalt, a calm breeze blew through the streets, causing those few trees that lined the pavement to rustle and sway. Those few people who were awake at this early hour of the morning were staring at the pair as they walked by. Kaneko's enhanced hearing managed to pick up the comments some of those people made. Not all of them were very pleasant. The derogatory remarks they made about Naruto's sexual preference pissed her off even more than the ones they made about her she wasn't a little girl, and those rude remarks about how Naruto was some kind of lolicon delinquent made her want to pound their faces in. Don't let their words bother you, Naruto's voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up at him to see his grinning face staring down at her. They don't know anything about us, and none of these people are important. I don't give a crap what they say about me and you shouldn't either. After a moment of thought, Kaneko nodded. Okay, I won't let them get to me, she said, then added, I still want to punch them through a wall. Naruto's grin widened until his eyes were forced closed and his whisker marks spread further across his face. In that moment he truly looked like a kitsune, just as Akeno always teased him about. So do I. With her thoughts and desire for violence stymied, for the most part, Kaneko turned her thoughts on how she ended up in this position. After their small, touching moment within the clubroom, Naruto had asked her if she wanted to go with him to the market so he could buy breakfast for the others. It hadn't taken her long to agree, and that was how they ended up traveling down the road, heading back towards the clubroom with Naruto carrying several bags in one hand, filled with all kinds of breakfast foods. She had enjoyed the time they spent together immensely, though a part of her was wondering why this was. Naruto was new to her. She did not know him all that well. Yet somehow, in the span of a single day, he had become very important to her. It must be the head petting. It felt good, really good. They soon entered the clubroom to see a frantic Rias demanding that they all spread out and begin to search for her and Naruto. Yuto, I want you to lead the search. With your speed you should be able to. Rias trailed off as Kaneko and Naruto stepped into the room. The others also noticed their arrival and turned to look at the pair. Cue awkward silence. Naruto attempted to break the awkward silence by lifting the steaming bags of food. I brought breakfast. Naruto. Rias looked like she was visibly restraining herself from pouncing on him. Kaneko was impressed. It was a well-known fact that all members of the Grimoire household were very affectionate towards their servants. Rias was even more affectionate than others. That she had not jumped on him already was amazing. Good morning, Rias, Naruto said as he set the bags down on the table and began opening them to pull out the contents. Kaneko decided to stand there with him rather than sit back down. It would be pointless to take a seat when she would just move onto Naruto's lap the moment he sat down anyways. I'm sorry I didn't wake you, but you looked tired, so I thought I'd let you sleep in. Where have you been? Naruto looked at her oddly. Getting breakfast. Why did you leave the clubroom? Naruto blinked. Because I wanted to get breakfast for everyone. You still shouldn't have left the clubroom, Rias argued. Her body shuddered once. She was definitely hanging on by a thread. What if something happened? What if you ran into that priest? Or the fallen angels he was working with? Then I would have kicked their asses, Naruto declared with such confidence that Kaneko actually believed he could. The only reason I got injured the last time was because I ended up letting that stuff spill all over me before I realized it was dangerous. Now I know better. It won't happen again. Still, Rias looked uncertain. Era, Akino butt into the conversation before it could devolve further. It seems Bucho really is taken in with Kitsune-kun. Acting like a spouse worrying for her husband. Yufufufu. What was this? Was Rias actually blushing? What a rare occurrence. Issei didn't seem to like where the conversation was heading, judging by his expression. Not that Kaneko cared what that pervert thought. It's just because he's my servant. I would have been just as worried if you, Issei, Kiba, or Kaneko went out when there were fallen angels and a rogue exorcist running around. If you say so. Akino didn't mention that Kaneko had been with Naruto, and Rias had not been nearly as worried about her being gone as she had Naruto. Rias crossed her arms under her chest, which pushed them up quite a bit. Kaneko looked at Rias' chest, then at her own chest. She frowned. I do say so. Speaking of exorcists, Naruto decided to steer the conversation in another direction as he set about piling food on one of the paper plates he had brought back. Everything from onigiri to bread rolls and pancakes were put on the plate. He also grabbed 2 forks before moving to sit down. You mentioned that the one we ran into was an exile. As soon as Naruto sat down, he had to move the plate above his head so Kaneko could crawl onto his lap. Setting the plate down on Kaneko's lap, he let the girl hold the plate with one hand while giving her one of the forks. The other hand slid around her waist to keep her in place, and he used the hand that now possessed only one fork to begin cutting up the pancakes. Kaneko attacked the onigiri, munching on one of the rice balls like it was one of her sweets. Rias sighed as she saw the scene. She was too tired to feel irritated. Issei was not. He glared daggers at Naruto as he took large chunks out of the bread roll in his hand. There are 2 kinds of exorcists, Rias explained. Those who work under the divine and those who have gone rogue. They are considered heretics and are normally killed on sight when found by the church. However, some manage to escape and come into contact with fallen angels. As both are considered enemies of the church and God, they often team up and work together. They are very dangerous, she continued. Sometimes even more so than a regular exorcist. It would be best if both you and Issei did your best to avoid running into them. Are all priests insane like that? Asked Issei, suddenly speaking up. That exorcist didn't seem like he was all there. He really enjoyed killing devils. He even found enjoyment in killing humans. Issei went quiet for a moment as he stared at his free hand. And that girl, Asia, I couldn't even protect her. Please forget about that girl, Issei, Rias snapped at him with surprising suddenness. He looked up at her in shock, causing the red-haired devil to grimace. Sorry, but you really shouldn't be spending time with her. That girl is on the side of our enemies, working for those who would like nothing better than to kill us. If you ended up getting involved with her, it would cause a lot of problems. I don't even want to think about the amount of blood that may be spilled from an incident where you 2 got involved with each other. Issei didn't say anything, but the look on his face made it clear he was not happy with Rias' words. Breakfast was quiet after that. Kacharp, do you think I did the right thing? Rias asked now that everyone aside from her and Naruto had vacated the premise. Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko had school to go to. Issei would have gone to school, but his injuries were still aggravating him, so she had told him to take the day off. He had stomped out just a little while ago. No doubt the young man was still miffed about Rias' words against Asia. Naruto also had the day off, but decided to spend it with Rias instead of going home. It wasn't like there was anything to do back home that he couldn't do here, and the company was infinitely more pleasant. The only one among them who had been difficult to convince to leave had been Kaneko. The girl seemed to truly love Naruto, or at least love getting pampered by him. It was hard to tell with her. Only Naruto's promise of more head-petting when she came back convinced her to go to class that day. You mean with Issei and the nun? Asked Naruto as he sat on the same couch he always did, his left leg laying horizontally over his right knee as he stretched his arms against the back of the headrest. He looked pretty relaxed, but Rias was beginning to understand him a bit better and knew that even when he looked like he wasn't paying attention to anything happening around him, he was just as aware as everyone else. Rias nodded. That's a very difficult question to answer. Her spiky-haired servant sighed as he leaned his head back against the headrest. Rias didn't say anything, even though she wanted to. She suspected, correctly, that he was simply trying to put his thoughts into words. Eventually, his head came back up and he looked at her with his azure blue eyes. "You didn't do anything wrong, per se," he started out, speaking slowly and carefully, as if he wanted to make sure his words were the correct ones. "As a leader, you must always do what is best for those under you. Not only that, but you are a noble among the devil clans. Any actions taken by a member of your peerage can be ascribed as an action taken by you. If Issei went out and started killing fallen angels, they would assume you ordered him to an attack in mass. Which, of course, would lead to the other devil clans attacking in retaliation for the attack on you. The situation would quickly escalate and we would eventually have a full-scale war on our hands." Naruto marveled at how mature and wise he sounded. All those lessons he had with Ba-chan about what a Hokage had to do were finally starting to pay off in some way, which was good because he was really beginning to wonder why he needed to have all that useless crap shoved into his head even if it was done via shadow clone. Now he was finally putting that knowledge to use and it felt good. It was official. He, Uzumaki Naruto, was awesome. Once more Rias marveled at how intelligent Naruto was. He sounded a lot like her brother. It was almost like he was speaking from experience. At the same time, you need to see things from Issei's perspective. Rias perked up. Issei is a human who got involved with this world for no other reason than because he has a sacred gear. He doesn't give a crap about the conflict between devils and fallen angels. Things like that just don't matter to him. Naruto paused for a moment, then nodded to himself. That sounded pretty deep, just like something his sensei and godfather, Kami bless his pervy soul, would say. And because of that when he looks at Asia, he doesn't see a nun an enemy of devil kind, but a friend. When two people meet a bond is formed between them. These bonds become nearly impossible to break, and doing so is often one of the most difficult if not downright impossible tasks to accomplish. He knew that from experience. Thank you Sasuke Tem. Issei has already formed a strong bond with this girl. Is it stronger than the one he has with us? Asked a now worried Rias. She knew that if Issei did not have a strong bond with them it would be her fault. While she had not neglected him per se, she had focused more of her attention on Naruto because she wanted to unravel the mystery behind her blonde servant. Without seeing how the two act around each other I can't say for sure, Naruto replied honestly. However, it's clear to me that the two of them have a powerful bond while his bond with us is hanging by a thread, especially after your argument just a little while ago. Rias winced. If it comes down to it he will side with her. What would you do if you were in my place? I would never tell you how to lead your peerage, Naruto said. I've never been a leader before. Though he had come close. Had the war just ended differently then maybe. But no, he couldn't think about what ifs. It would just lead him to look at all the mistakes he had made back then. He needed to look towards the future now, and Rias and the others were that future. However, the way I see it, you have several options available to you. The first is to kill Asia and make it look like the fallen angels had decided to get rid of her. This will direct Issei's anger towards the fallen angels and will push him to train harder by turning him into an avenger. That's horrible. Rias felt bile rise in her throat. How could Naruto even suggest she do that? I know. Naruto gave her a grim smile. Aside from being morally reprehensible it wouldn't really work in the long run anyway. There is just as much a chance of Issei finding out what you did and the situation backfiring on you. Aside from that, even if he did not find out you staged her death, you run the risk of him turning into a mindless killing machine hell-bent on revenge. He would become an uncontrollable monster and would likely start the war you were trying to avert anyways. Then why would you even suggest this? Because it's option I've seen used before, Naruto replied. There are those in this world who would do anything it took to get their desired outcome. I knew someone who took this route and saw its outcome. It wasn't pretty. For just a second, Rias thought she could see a flicker of anguish within Naruto's eyes. It was gone almost as quickly as it came, but the sight of that pain left her stunned. The second option is to find some way to force Issei into obeying your orders, Naruto continued. This isn't as bad as the first option, but still won't help you in the long run. By denying him the chance to save his friend, Issei will begin to resent you. He will likely become rebellious, questioning or sometimes outright refusing your orders, and when the time comes that you need him, he will remember that when he felt he needed you, you were not there for him. Rias closed her eyes. That was certainly not an option she wanted to think about. Opening them again, she looked back at Naruto. And the last option? I think you know what the last option is. Naruto gave her a knowing smile. The last option has the highest risk, but if it succeeds, it'll likely yield the greatest results. The smile on his face grew. I like to call it doing the right thing. Cacharp, please let me go save her. Not a chance. Rias didn't even look up from where Issei's silhouetted form could be seen against the curtain's backdrop as she spoke. She finished buttoning up her shirt, then got started on her skirt, pulling the cloth up her porcelain legs. If you do this, your actions will have a major effect on the relationship between devils and fallen angels. Entering their territory without just cause would mean war. Once the skirt was buttoned up, she slid her socks on. But Asia is my friend. Damn it, Issei. Rias finally slid the curtains open, foregoing the shoulder cape and button-down corset. She stalked towards the brown-haired boy, her eyes narrowed. The normally perverted second year took several steps backwards until he was pressed against the wall. Don't you get it? If I let you go to the church to rescue that girl, you will be killed. I don't want something like that to happen to you. But Rainier said something about a ceremony today. It's possible that Asia will be killed, and that's something I can't allow to happen. Naruto leaned against the wall next to Kaneko, his arms crossed as he watched the proceedings. The others were also in the room, all except Akeno, and all of them focused on what was happening between their club president and king, and the pawn of their peerage. I don't care, Rias stated, so long as you are a member of my peerage, I won't let you go. Then disown me, Issei cried out. The young man looked like he was on the verge of a breakdown. Even Kaneko could not help but feel for the boy. I'll save Asia on my own. I'm just a pawn anyways. It's not like you'll be losing much by letting go of your weakest piece. Rias' eye sharpened. Enough, she snapped, causing Issei to actually go stiff at the dangerous tone in her voice. Just then, Akeno burst into the room. She hurriedly walked over to Rias and leaned into her ear, whispering something that no one else could hear. Rias' face shifted for a moment before going back to a neutral expression as she nodded. She turned back to look at the others. Akeno, Naruto, and I have something important to do, so we'll be going out for a bit. Naruto stood up from the wall and uncrossed his arms. Placing a hand on Kaneko's head, he smiled as the girl looked up at him. Take care of your senpai, okay? He might be a pervert, but he's a good kid. I know, Kaneko nodded. Don't worry, I'll watch over him. Right, Naruto rubbed her head, carefully running his fingers over her ears. The girl twitched and nearly began purring. And take care of yourself as well. I would hate to see anything happen to you. Kaneko blushed. Okay. Be Bucho. Issei shouted in surprise. Wait, I'm not done yet. Before I leave, I want you to know something, Rias interrupted. You may think the pawn is the weakest piece in chess, but that's a very big misconception. A pawn possesses a very special ability that no other piece has. Promotion. Much like in a real game of chess, the pawns in the evil piece system possess the ability to be promoted to any piece other than a king once it enters enemy territory. Issei scratched his head. He didn't get it. Rias looked mildly exasperated. Issei, what I am saying is that the moment you step into enemy territory, you can be promoted and increase your power beyond that of a simple pawn. For instance, a church to us would be a good example of enemy territory. A little ways away, Kiba knocked a fist into an open palm as a look of realization spread across his face. Naruto was grinning fiercely. So wait, Issei's face scrunched up as he struggled to comprehend what he was being told. Are you saying that if I were to enter enemy territory and be promoted, I could gain power similar to Akeno's ability as a queen? In theory, Rias told him, but the queen is the strongest piece. With the amount of strength you have right now, that kind of power may put a large strain on your body. It's possible that you won't be able to bear the weight of the promotion. So then, turning into a knight will make me like Kiba, and a rook would be like Kaneko-chan. Also possible, Rias said. She grabbed the corset and shoulder cape in Akino's hand and began putting them on as Naruto walked over to them. Also, I have one more thing I need to tell you. Issei looked over at her. Your sacred gear is activated by your willpower. The stronger your will is, the more powerfully it will react to your request. Willpower. And the last thing you must remember, Rias stated with the utmost seriousness. Even a pawn can kill a king. This is the same basic principle found in chess. With it you can become stronger. Issei was now off in his own little world, studying the chess set on the table. Rias turned to Kiba. Yudo, I leave everything to you. Kiba gave his king a small salute. Of course. Rias nodded, then left with Naruto and Akino in tow. That was some pretty good acting back there, Naruto told her when they had gotten far enough away that it was unlikely anyone would hear them. I was impressed. Are you sure this plan is going to work? Asked Rias, not even looking at Naruto as they walked away from the occult research building. I'm taking a big risk. Even knowing that the Grigori are not involved in what's going on in this town, there is still a large danger present, especially with that rogue exorcist hanging around. Everything will work out fine, Naruto reassured her. Have faith in your servants. Even Issei is not without his strength. But Issei is still not very strong. Rias bit her lip in worry. He hasn't been able to increase much in strength since his reincarnation. What if? Issei is currently fighting to protect something precious to him, Naruto interrupted with the kind of confidence someone showed when they knew what they were talking about. His voice carried the strength of conviction. He is fighting for his friend, to rescue her, to protect her. And when the time comes that he needs the strength to do what's necessary, I have no doubt he will find it. It's only when we're protecting the things that are precious to us that we find out what true strength really is. As they walked down out of the school, Rias found herself in awe of Naruto's wisdom. It was so at odds with his personality, and yet, she couldn't help but think it suited him. Listening to him now, she almost believed that he had experienced something similar to Issei already. And maybe he had. Rias still didn't know as much about Uzumaki Naruto as she wanted. But that would change soon. After all this was over, she would step up her game to find out more about him. That was a promise. Catcharp. Naruto grinned as he looked around the clearing Akino's magic circle teleported them to. It was in a forested area somewhere near the church, or at least he assumed it was near the church. It's not like he could see anything beyond the trees. They were pretty thick here. Even though they were nowhere near as large and majestic as the trees back in Konoha, these ones were still very big, with trunks that were easily 5 people wide, standing at a height that towered over 30 feet, and branches that were thick with leaves. It made seeing past them impossible as the branches overlapped each other in a twisted network of patterns that only nature could produce. Well, look what we have here. There was also a little girl here. Standing up on the branch of one of the trees before she jumped down was a girl with her blonde hair styled in twin, short side ponytails and blue eyes. She was wearing a gothic Lolita outfit, which seemed to consist of a black Lolita dress with white frills, a large black bow on the front and a green jewel embedded into her collar. Covering much of her legs were thigh-high, white socks and black shoes. She was also wearing a bow on top of her hair. Welcome to our humble little part of the forest, the blonde girl curtsied. My name is Mittelt, and I will Kya. The girl in the Lolita dress stumbled back in shock, nearly tripping over her own 2 feet as a pair of bright blue eyes appeared mere inches from her own. Wah, how did you get over here so quickly? Akino and Rias both blinked, then looked to their left. When they saw the young man they had come here with not right next to them, they looked back at the scene with the blonde girl in shock. There was only one thought on their minds. So fast. So kawaii. Naruto mumbled out. Mittelt flushed a deep red and also take a hesitant step back. That look he was giving her was seriously freaking her out. What the hell was up with this guy? Before she could so much as think of moving further away, the girl suddenly found herself being hoisted off her feet, earning a loud squeak from her. She was then presented to Akino and Rias like some kind of prize won at a stall. Can we keep her? Asked Naruto, his large blue eyes staring at Rias as he gave the redhead his variant of the puppy dog eyes. Era. Akino gave the blonde an amused smile as she placed her hands on her cheeks. It seems Kitsune-kun really does like cute things. I guess that's why he likes Kaneko-chan so much. I wonder what Kaneko-chan will say when she sees she's been replaced. Rias' eyebrow twitched. Naruto, you cannot keep the fallen angel. But, put the fallen angel down, Naruto. Ah. Naruto sniffed. You're no fun, Rias. The redhead just gave him a glare, causing him to sniffle a bit more before putting the girl down. This act seemed to snap the blonde-haired fallen angel, Mitelt, out of her stupor. She jumped back, putting several meters of distance between her and the trio of devils and glared at Naruto, though the effect was ruined by her large blush. It didn't help that she looked like a cute little girl instead of a dangerous fallen angel. You're going to pay for that. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the girl as she stomped on the ground. It really just made her look even more like a child. You don't really think you're enough to beat all three of us, do you? She might not be able to on her own, a voice sounded out behind them. But that's fine because she's not alone here. Floating in the air with their angel wings already out were two people. The first one Naruto noticed was another woman, this one buxom female with long, navy blue hair that obscured her right eye and brown eyes. Her clothing was about what he would usually expect a fallen angel to wear, given all he'd been told about them. A violet, trenchcoat-like top with a wide collar, a matching miniskirt and black-heeled shoes. The trenchcoat was open at her chest, giving an ample view of her cleavage. The only other item of interest was the necklace that hung around her neck. The other fallen angel that had shown up was one Naruto was already familiar with. Ah, it's the donut guy. I'm not the donut guy, brat. The fallen angel growled. It's Daneseek. Daneseek. Get it right, damn it. Sorry. Naruto scratched his cheek sheepishly. But that's way too long for me. I think I'll just call you donut guy. Grr. He's trying to make you angry, Daneseek, the woman chided. Don't let him rile you up. HMPH. It's not like I actually care what a brat like him says. Oi, don't call me a brat you damned donut man. It's not donut man either. Idiot. Who do you think you're calling an idiot? Idiot. By this point everyone else in the clearing was sweet-dropping as Naruto and Daneseek began butting heads with each other. No, really, they were butting their heads against each other, their teeth grit as they tried to overpower the other. The only thing they didn't have was sparks of rivalry flying from their eyes. Akeno. Rias sighed as she tried to stave off the coming headache. She was beginning to regret having Naruto come with her for this. If you would. Akeno smiled widely. Of course, Bucho. Dark storm clouds began gathering in the sky, causing the two arguing males to stop arguing and look up with everyone else. There was a rumble of thunder, then lightning lit up the sky and descended upon Akeno, lighting her up like a Christmas tree. Rather than get hurt, however, all it seemed to do was change her clothes. Of course, that makes it sound a lot less exciting than it actually was. It didn't just change her clothes. First, all of her clothing seemed to dissolve, leaving her completely bare. Then, thick ribbons of energy gathered around her body. Her breasts became bound in a white kimono shirt with long, voluminous sleeves appearing on her arms, and her hips and legs were hidden by red hakama pants. Instead of looking like a schoolgirl, she now looked like a Miko priestess. Issei would be disappointed when he realized he missed out on this sexy transformation. Naruto was going to make it a point to rub that in his face when this was all over. What is this? Mitelt pointed at the now Miko'd out Akeno. Some kind of cosplay. You're one to talk, Naruto shot back with a snicker. Grr, what's that supposed to mean? I think he means your maid outfit, Mitelt, the bustier fallen angel informed her blonde comrade. Mitelt blushed. Despite finding the proceedings between Naruto and the fallen angels amusing, Akeno went through two hand signs. Naruto was surprised when he recognized them. She then raised her hands above her head and he felt a brief surge of her power. Seconds later, dozens of red magic circles appeared in the sky, surrounding all six of them. They were trapped. So this was your plan all along, huh? Daneseek scoffed. You wanted to trap us inside of here where you could finish us off. That's the plan, Rias smiled. I'm going to make you all disappear. Ha, as if you, the Miko, or that brat could, eh? Where'd the brat go? Rias and everyone else looked around when they realized that Naruto had somehow vanished while everyone was focused on Akeno's magic show. They didn't have to wait long to find out where he was. Not even a second later, he made an entrance that no one would be forgetting anytime soon. Bonsai. Before the woman with blue hair had a chance to turn around, she felt an inexplicable and excruciating pain on the back of her head as a pair of shoes heels slammed into her with the force of a freight train. The woman shot towards the earth like a rocket, Naruto flying right behind her, and face planted into the ground hard enough that rock and gravel exploded outwards from the center of impact. A few seconds later the dust settled down to show Naruto standing on the back of the woman's head. Said woman's body was sprawled out like a rag doll that had just been thrown to the ground. Her left leg twitched once, twice, then, no more. She was quite clearly out cold. Woo! Naruto cheered, pumping a fist into the air as a huge grin emerged on his face. That was awesome. He just took out Calawarner in a single blow. Mitelt gaped at the blonde. She would have been better of keeping her mouth shut, as she had now drawn Naruto's attention. Quicker than the blonde girl could ever hope to follow him, Naruto raised his hands and began manipulating his fingers. Several steel wires glinted in the moonlight as they were suddenly strung taut. Mitelt, who was in the middle of all these wires, quickly found her eyes widening as she was tied up with no room for escape. With an indignant squawk, she ended up falling to the ground. Naruto ignored the girl who was yelling and screaming and wiggling around like some kind of earthworm. It wasn't like she could do anything to him when she was all tied up like that. He quickly hopped backwards to avoid the light spear that had been thrown at him. The weapon buried itself in the ground he had just vacated, fizzling before it crackled out of existence. Looking up, he grinned when he saw Danesik bearing down on him. With a flick of his wrists, a pair of kunai dropped into his hands. Naruto quickly began channeling minute amounts of wind chakra through the blades. A green glow soon surrounded the kunai. Like ethereal fire, the flames of chakra licked at the edges of the blade and cast shadows on Naruto's face as he lifted the kunai up. Danesik struck at the whisker-faced former ninja as soon as he was within striking distance. His light spear thrust towards Naruto's chest. It was a move that was bound to miss as Naruto brought his left kunai to bear. Striking the underside of the light spear with his own all-purpose utility weapon, Naruto caused the spear to move up high over his shoulder, missing him completely. In retaliation for the attempt on his life, the blonde shinobi quickly struck out with his right kunai. Danesik threw himself backwards. He was quick enough to avoid getting his head taken off, but not quick enough to escape unscathed. Now standing several feet away from Naruto, the fallen angel with the fedora wiped at the wetness on his right cheek. He grinned when he saw it was blood. It seems I've finally found someone who may be able to actually give me a fight. Oh, I'll give you more than that donut guy. Danesik's eyes twitched. I'm gonna kick your ass from here to the moon. Ha, I'd like to see you try. Danesik roared, launching himself at the blonde with every intention of running the boy through. His light spear crackled with repressed energy, seemingly just as eager as its creator to inflict harm upon the blonde teen with whisker marks on his cheeks. With a sick grin on his face that showed how much he was enjoying himself, Danesik closed in, his form a blur. This desire to see pain inflicted upon his opponent was not to be either, it seemed. Just as he got close, Naruto disappeared. His form flickered briefly and then it was gone. Danesik skidded to a stop, blinking several times as confusion set in. He looked left, then right, then up. Nowhere. The blonde brat was nowhere to be found. Just where did he go? Never let your opponent get behind you. Danesik's eyes widened. He turned his head just in time to see the blonde crouched behind him, his hands in the shape of a hand seal. Naruto grinned. I've been wanting to do this for some time now. Thanks for giving me this chance. Konohagakure hidden technique. 1000 years of pain. With a roar that shook the heavens, Naruto shoved his chakra-enhanced fingers directly into Danesik's ass. You know those moments in all anime, manga, fanfiction where time seems to stand still and everyone sweat drops because something incredibly stupid just happened. This was one of those moments. Several seconds soon passed, the moment of sweat dropping ended, and Danesik was unceremoniously launched into the air like a cannonball from the glorified ass poke. With his hands on his rump, the man unleashed a loud, girlish scream of anguish and humiliation. Said scream got softer and softer as the man disappeared into the atmosphere, and soon, it vanished entirely along with the fallen angel himself. Bye, donut guy. Naruto waved as the man became nothing more than a pinprick before vanishing into the night sky. Behind him, Akeno and Rias both looked on, matching beads of sweat trickling down the side of their faces. Akeno. Yes, Bucho. Did that really just happen? If by that, you mean, Kitsune-kun beating 3 fallen angels like they were newborn humans in the most humiliating way possible without killing them and not getting a single scratch in return, then yes, that did just happen. I thought so. Catch-arp. Naruto found himself smiling as he walked home later that night. Today had been a good day, he decided. He spent time with his precious people, managed to learn a few things about Rias, and he got to kick ass all in the same day. Really, what more could he possibly ask for? Well, an all-you-can-eat ramen buffet would be nice, but you can't have everything. Tragic. Issei had also really surprised him today. Well, not really, but it was certainly good to be proven right. When the time came that he needed to fight for someone he deemed precious, the pervert had managed to find the strength to defeat a fallen angel. He still had a long way to go before he would actually be able to put up a fight against some of the stronger opponents that were no doubt out there, but Naruto had a good feeling that the kid would be fine. Provided he had the proper motivation, of course. As he was nearing his home, Naruto finally stopped walking and sighed. I know you're there. You're not very good at hiding. Why don't you come on out? Hee, so you were able to detect me. Danesik stepped out from behind a flagpole. There was a disturbing grin on his face, one that most psychopaths have when they're about to do something, well, psychotic. I would say I'm impressed, but it wasn't like I was actually trying to mask my presence from you. Where are the other 2? Don't know, the man shrugged. Who cares about them anyways? They were weak. They probably went back to the Grigori to beg for forgiveness. I see. Naruto paused. Why didn't you follow them? Che, why would I want to go back there? The man scoffed, sounding disgusted at the thought of rejoining the fallen angel faction. Everyone there is so weak. Constantly trying to maintain this fragile peace we now have. I've gotten sick of it. I want battle. I crave combat. I need to fight and kill so that I can finally enjoy this life I have. So you're one of those people, huh? Naruto closed his eyes, his face set in a grimace. The kind of person who kills simply because he can, who takes pleasure from causing others pain. That's right, Danesik crowed. I crave bloodshed and death. I need it, to fight strong opponents and watch as their life bleeds out of them. Ever since this damn stalemate I've been without it for so long I thought I might go mad. Naruto said nothing, though the frown on his face intensified. You are strong. You managed to beat myself, Mittelt and Kalawarner without getting a scratch. Granted, those other 2 are weaklings and I had underestimated you. Light flared into existence within Danesik's hand, coalescing into a physical form and hardening. He pointed the newly crafted light spear at Naruto, whose back was still turned. I won't make the same mistake again. I don't suppose I could just convince you to leave. What do you think? I see. Naruto sighed. You say you won't make the same mistake again, but by standing there, jabbering away like some kind of idiot, you already have. Huh, what the hell are you As pain erupted in his back and chest, Danesik looked down to see a hand piercing it. The hand was sticking right out of the center of his chest, the solar plexus to be exact. It was covered in blood that glowed a bright green due to the strange energy surrounding the appendage. He blinked several times, his mind not quite registering, or perhaps simply unable to comprehend, what had just happened. What? Somehow managing to find some strength to move, the man looked up to where he had last seen Naruto, only for the blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy standing there to disappear in a cloud of smoke. The wind quickly worked to blow away the smoke seconds later, revealing the whisker-marked teen to be gone. The only thing left in the space he had been was a log. How? Danesik was unable to get anything else as the hand was yanked from his back. Copious amounts of blood began pouring out of the wound as the hand that had been acting as a plug was removed. His legs weakening as the life-giving liquid spilled from his body, the fallen angel soon collapsed onto his hands and knees, his breathing heavy as blood began running out of his mouth as well. Several seconds later, the man collapsed completely, his form going still and the light in his eyes dimming. Naruto stood over his now dead foe, a grimace of remorse on his face. Fool, he whispered. You should have just left when I gave you the chance. He looked down at his hand, sighing as he used a burst of wind chakra to make all the blood shoot off and splatter across the concrete. You can come out as well, Rias, Naruto called out in a tired voice, I know you're there. Looking chastised at being caught, Rias walked out from around the corner she had been hiding behind. She stood there awkwardly, not quite meeting his gaze as he looked over at her. Eventually, Naruto just sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. Is there something you needed me for? No, Rias shook her head. I just wanted to know why. Why I didn't just kill those fallen angels when I had the chance. Naruto finished, then gestured with his head towards the corpse of the fallen angel he had just slain. You want to know why I didn't kill him the first time we fought? Rias nodded reluctantly. Yes. What purpose would killing them serve? Asked Naruto, closing his eyes tiredly. None. There is no purpose in killing them. The only thing it would have done is spread the cycle of hatred even more. I'm betting that somewhere, those fallen angels have friends, maybe even family. If I killed them here, those people who loved them would have found out and hated me for it. Then they would have come to kill me, which would make you hate them in turn and retaliate. Eventually, devils and fallen angels would become embroiled in hatred as each sought justice and revenge against the other in a never-ending and pointless conflict. Rias said nothing, but she didn't need to. The look on her face said it all. Dying like trash, never-ending hatred, a pain that never heals. That is war. Naruto stared at his hand, clenching and unclenching it with an almost absent-mindedness. I truly hate war, and I will not be party to acts that might instigate it. That is why I refuse to kill unless no other option is available to me. He chuckled in mock derision. I suppose you could say I'm a pacifist with a penchant for ass-kicking. He looked back over at Rias to see her staring at him. Does that answer your question? Yes it does, Rias smiled at him, though it was one filled with confusion and concern. Good night, Naruto. Good night, Rias. As Rias vanished within a magic circle, Naruto continued his stroll back home. He wanted to get some sleep. The fight with Danesek had ruined his good mood. Chapter 6. Arising problems. Naruto hadn't been able to sleep last night. Perhaps it was due to the reminder that even in this new world there were still people who didn't care about others, people who had no trouble spreading hatred to the world in order to satiate their own desires. Or maybe it was just because he had been feeling restless. Whatever the case was, Naruto had been incapable of getting even a wink of sleep, thus he decided to do something more productive with his time. Noises most often associated with mass destruction resounded throughout the wooded area surrounding the now completely abandoned church. Minor explosions rang out all around as a number of trees were felled. The air was kicked up by violent torrents of wind, causing strong updrafts that sent gravel and large rocks into the sky before they were shattered by a powerful fist as they descended once gravity had taken hold of them. In the center of this destruction was Uzumaki Naruto. After realizing that sleep was out of his reach, Naruto had decided to get some training in. Most of what he worked on was basic stuff and things he already knew: chakra control, elemental composition, enhancing the body with chakra. Things most ninja of his former village learn at some point or another and don't require them to have massive reserves. Another thing Naruto wanted to work on was Tsunade's super strength technique. He remembered Sakura giving an explanation on how it worked at one point in time. Naruto hadn't really understood what she had tried telling him at the time, but he managed to at least get the gist of it. To use the chakra-enhanced strength technique, the user had to focus chakra into their hands and feet using extremely precise chakra control and release it with pinpoint precision and perfect timing. This greatly enhanced the user's strength to a degree that very few could ever hope to match without some kind of supplementary jutsu like the lightning armor of the Yondaime Reikage. According to Sakura, the training to learn this technique was intense. She had told him that once she'd learned the principles of the technique and gotten the basics down, Tsunade had come at her with full strength and she had been forced to become capable of using it while under pressure. The result had been that Sakura was capable of literally causing 5-meter-wide craters to form on the ground with little effort. It was brute strength maximized to the extreme. Naruto did not have Tsunade to help him here. Nor was he as smart as Sakura. All he had was determination, guts, and his own ingenuity. It would have to be enough. Glaring at his newest opponent, another tree, Naruto set himself in a horse stance, legs spread wide, knees bent, and fists tucked into his sides. He closed his eyes and began to circulate his chakra, feeling it flow through his coils, a mere trickle compared to the unfathomable ocean it had once been. Grabbing onto the flow, he then directed it all towards his left hand, which was soon coated in an ethereal blue flame that pulsed and flickered in time with his heartbeat. Blue eyes snapped open. HYA. With a loud shout, Naruto's fist struck the tree, creating a resounding boom that echoed within the forested area like thunder striking the earth. YEOWCH. Naruto's scream of pain went unmasked even by the rumble of the tree as it was felled, striking the ground with a loud crash while several hundred splinters flew off the wood where his fist had struck like a pantheon of angry gods. Swearing like a sailor that had just gotten shit-faced after having the worst day of his life, the blonde Uzumaki waved his now red and swollen hand about frantically, as if doing that would actually make it feel better. It didn't. In fact, the wind seemed to make it worse, but Naruto was in so much pain that what little agony was added on by the act didn't register. Fuck. Fucking. Goddamn stupid tree. Fucking stupid technique. How hard can it be? Shit. Damn it. As the swear words spouting from his mouth began to wind down, the swollen hand was raised to his face to allow his eyes to assess the damage. It honestly wasn't too bad. The hand was red and looked sort of like a balloon that was only half blown up, but it would go down soon enough. The real problem was the burns marks on his hands. They were chakra burns, a term used to describe what happens when too much chakra is pumped into a specific part of the body and released without being properly directed. The burns covered much of his knuckles where he had directed most of his chakra and even some of his fingers. Those would take a lot longer to heal. I don't think I'm going to get any more done today, Naruto sighed as he looked up at the rising sun. It was getting late. Early, whatever. The point was he should probably head back home. Naruto began speeding through the trees with chakra-enhanced leaps. As he traveled home, he wondered why he couldn't seem to get the enhanced strength technique down. What was he doing wrong? Was it because he had not channeled enough chakra? Or had he just not gotten the timing down? It could be either one of those. Hell, it could have been both of those or another problem so unlikely he simply hadn't thought of it. There was no real way to know what he was doing right or wrong in this instance. Naruto was pretty much running around in the dark. Trees soon became buildings. Not wanting to be seen by the local population right now, Naruto took to the roofs, running along at speeds most humans wouldn't be able to keep up with. If anyone were inclined to look up, they would likely just see a blur of black and orange. He arrived home in short order. After deactivating the traps, he walked into his house and strolled towards the bathroom, stripping off his clothes as he went. They were getting pretty smelly. And cut up, with several tears and a number of holes that made them look more like rags than actual clothes. He was going to need a new pair soon. Sewing these things up just wasn't cutting it anymore. The hot water of the shower felt extremely nice, and it did a good job of relaxing his aching muscles. He did wince a few times when some of the hot water splashed onto the burn marks on his hands. Still, he did his best to ignore that and get cleaned up. Once done in the shower, Naruto, with a towel wrapped around his waist and his hair still dropping wet, made his way into his bedroom. It was there that he realized he had a late-night visitor, who apparently decided to stay over even though he hadn't been home. Somehow, he should have realized she would be at his apartment. She had practically moved in these days. Naruto walked over to the bed where Rias was currently sleeping. She was lying on her side, facing his side of the room, her legs curled slightly as she held a pillow to her like she normally did him when they slept together. Her red hair fanned out around her like the long, sensuous tails belonging to a creature of unfathomable beauty. There was a small frown marring her face. Naruto got dressed in a pair of black boxers and some pants. He decided to forego his shirt for now and instead walked over to the bed where he began to shake Rias awake. "Good morning, Naruto," Rias mumbled sleepily after she woke up. Naruto took a step back and watched as she sat up in bed, the blanket falling off her generous figure as she stretched and yawned. "You look tired," Naruto noted. "I didn't sleep very well last night." Rias blinked some more, a small grimace appearing on her face as the sun shone in her eyes. I was too worried about you. Worried about me. Naruto was touched that she would worry about him, but also confused. Why were you worried about me? Rias tucked her feet underneath her and leaned a little to the side. A strand of hair found its way to her hand, which she absently twirled as a concerned gaze crossed her face. Last night, she began slowly, as if not quite sure what she wanted to say. After your battle where you killed that fallen angel you seemed so angry, so hurt. Bluish-green eyes looked into bright azure that were as clear as the afternoon sky. I just wanted to know if you were okay. Oh, he. Naruto chuckled a bit as he scratched the back of his head. I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't mean to go off on a rant like that. He looked away, his eyes closing and a grimace of pain coming to his face. I really don't like people like that. People like that, they don't care about anyone else. The rest of the world could burn, so long as they're able to satisfy their lust for blood and battle, nothing else matters. It's worse because these kinds of people realize that their desire to kill and maim will cause other people to feel the pain and hatred associated with loss, but they just don't care. You seem to have very strong opinions about this. Rias stood up from the bed and walked over to him. She was naked as always. Even though Naruto claimed not to be as perverted as Issei, that did not mean he was not above ogling a female when she so blatantly displayed herself to him. The blonde found himself slightly entranced as her breasts bounced and swayed with each step she took. Despite their size, they stood upright and proud, defying gravity in a way that had to bend if not break several of the laws that had been accepted as fact. There was absolutely no sag to them, perhaps because of her youth, or maybe her devil heritage. Not that he cared. Opai were opai, as Issei would say. Her hips held an alluring sway to them as she walked towards him. It wasn't a seductive sway like some of the kunoichi he had met who specialized in espionage and assassination, but more like the kind of natural sway that some females just possess and didn't realize it. There was just something about the way her hips swung slightly from side to side that made all the blood rush to Naruto's head. Yes, it was that head, not the one on his shoulders. Of course, the reason for his current stiffness could just be due to the fact that she was naked. Really, there wasn't much more a guy needed to get revved up than a beautiful, naked girl standing in front of them. I guess I do, Naruto admitted as she took one of his hands and brought it up to her face. His fingers were clenched tightly and there was blood leaking out from between them. Rias forced them to relax, spreading his fingers wide so she could examine his palm. The wounds where his fingernails dug into his skin were already healed. What's this? Asked Rias as she turned his hand over and saw the burns covering his knuckles. You didn't get these when fighting those fallen angels last night, did you? No, a shake of the head was her answer. I got these this morning while I was training in a secluded area of the forest. Rias frowned. What kind of training does this to the person? My kind of training, said a completely unsure Naruto. When Rias deadpanned, he looked away. What? Nothing. Rias sighed, bringing his hand up to her face. She gently pressed the back of his hand against her moist, red lips. Naruto withheld a shudder. Her soft lips felt like chiffon velvet against his skin, and a part of him was not ashamed to admit that he was wondering what those lips would feel like wrapped another part of his anatomy. When she removed her lips from his hand, she let go of it and allowed him to take his appendage back. A quick glance at the back of his hand showed that all the burn marks on it were healed. Thank you, Naruto said. Rias smiled as she grabbed his other hand and brought it to her lips. Don't mention of it, she replied, her hot breath hitting the back of his hand. You know I would do anything for my cute, powerful servant. Naruto's sweat dropped. You really shouldn't call someone cute and powerful at the same time. Those two things just don't go together very well, unless your name is Kaneko, he added, almost as an afterthought. Rias' left eye twitched. OWCH. Naruto yanked his hand back and rubbed it where several puncture marks could now be seen. What the hell was that for? For being an idiot, Rias said, licking her lips to get the blood off. An idiot. Naruto blinked. He knew he was the sharpest kunai of a set, but to just call him an idiot out of the blue like that. How am I an idiot? HMPH, Rias huffed, you shouldn't need me to tell you. Now give me your hand. No. Naruto pressed the hand she had bitten to his chest, cradling it like a small child. You're just going to bite it again. A single red eyebrow twitched. Naruto, give me your hand. I prefer my hand to not have any holes in it, thank you very much. Dang it, Naruto, give me your hand now. How about no? Naruto. Catcharp. The party to celebrate their newest club member and newly reincarnated Bishop of Rias Peerage, Asuya Argento, was well underway. Now that Naruto was able to really look at Asia, he had to admit she was a cutie. Her hair was long and blonde, falling down her backside to her backside. She had the brightest, most naive green eyes he had ever seen. There was an innocence about her that he couldn't help but find endearing. It had been an amusing scene to watch as Rias brought in the cake she apparently made sometime last night, probably before showing up at Naruto's house. Issei had tried to hog it all once he found out it was made by Rias, only to get stabbed by Kaneko, who wanted the sweet treat for herself. The second-year pervert had been forced to cut it and hand pieces out to the others, lest he suffer the cute first-year's wrath. Kiba had not been satisfied with the sliver-thin slice of cake he had been given. He probably should have been lucky Issei was even willing to give him some. It was clear to anyone with a brain that the boy only allowed the girls a larger slice of cake because they had breasts. Really, there was just something wrong with that kid. Perversion was all well and good, but being that lustful was just unnatural. Maybe he really was Jiraiya's reincarnation. One thing Naruto noticed throughout most of the party was the expression on Ria's face. She looked like she was deep in thought, and had spaced out several times during the party. He thought about asking her what was wrong, but figured if there was an issue she would probably tell him eventually. The least he could do right now was give her some time to try and deal with whatever ailed her on her own. If, after a certain amount of time passed, she still remained this way, well, all of his friends had called him nosy before. This certainly wouldn't be the first time he had butt into someone else's business. It wouldn't be the last time either. Catcharp. Issei was having a wonderful dream. He was wearing a white suit and standing in front of a chapel. There were people all around him, well-wishers who wanted to see the newlyweds off. His parents were standing up front. His dad was crying manly tears as he wished his son well, and his mom was telling him that she wanted her first grandchild to be a girl. He could even see his two friends, Mitsuda and Motohama, there as well, crying their eyes out and raging at him. Rias was also there, walking down a path made from a long, red carpet. She was wearing a gorgeous, white, knee-length wedding dress that had a large cutout around the neck so as to display a generous portion of her magnificent boobs. Over her head was a headdress that covered her beautiful crimson locks, and within her hands was a bouquet of roses. She walked forward, coming up to him and taking one of his arms, forcing Issei to walk with her. Together, they marched down the aisle. Was this really happening? Were they really getting married? The wedding itself was a whirlwind. Issei barely remembered any of it. Then again, he had mostly been focused on Rias' boobs, so it wasn't exactly his fault. Anyone who's ever laid eyes on those bazookas would understand. They had made their way to a love hotel after the wedding. Issei waited on the bed, feeling incredibly nervous as he thought about what was going to happen while Rias took a shower. Images flashed through his mind, each one more deprived than the last. Truly, X rating did not begin to describe the thoughts flying through his head. With all those perverted thoughts, it was almost a wonder the boy had not been thrown by back the most epic of nosebleeds. While he was preoccupied with his thoughts, the door to the shower slid open and Rias stepped out. Issei nearly died of a nosebleed right there. Rias moved over to the bed wearing nothing but a pair of panties as she crawled on top of him. Her breasts bounced and jiggled and swayed in the most enticing of ways. She was soon straddling his body, her crotch pressing against his groin and, in a voice that made Issei feel like he would die of sexy, asked him to kiss her. He had been just about to oblige when a voice spoke out. "Dear God, you really are one horny little bastard, you know that." Suddenly, the world was plunged into darkness. Rias disappeared and Issei fell flat on his face. With his nose bleeding, he jumped back to his feet and looked around. What's going on? Where is this place? Coo coo coo. A deep, dark voice laughed out, echoing all around him. Issei shivered in fear. It sounded like the bass rumble of some kind of long-forgotten demon or something. Who's there? Where are you? I'm right beside you, the voice rumbled behind him. Issei froze. His entire body screamed at him to run away, yet something else compelled him to confront the person talking to him. He turned around, and screamed like a little girl at the frightening sight before him. Standing in front of him, nearly 100 times larger than himself, was a creature he had only heard about in legends. Its mouth was a mass of razor-sharp teeth and its face held a distinct reptilian appearance. Long spikes jutted from the back of its head like a crown that continued on as spiky ridges along its neck and back. Its entire body was covered in bright red scales that shone with a brilliant luster as the fire raging around it refracted off the surface of its body. Holy shit, a dragon! Thanks for stating the obvious, the dragon rumbled. Its narrowed, rhomboidal eyes rolled at its partner's apparent need to state something so blatant. You know, I've been trying to talk to you for a while now, but my words have never been able to reach you because you were still so weak. Finally, its eyes glared down at Issei, nearly making the poor pervert quiver in fear. Finally I am able to appear before you. What do you mean? Why were you trying to speak to me? As the giant dragon's head leaned towards him, Issei stumbled backwards and fell on his backside. He gulped as steam from the dragon's nostrils hit him in the face, causing his hair to whip about in a frenzy. Two large, clawed hands attached to a pair of muscular arms clamped down on the ground on either side of him, making Issei squeak like a mouse that had been caught by a cat. You don't want to eat me, do you? Eat you? The dragon reared its head back and laughed. Wahahaha. Even if I were inclined to eat you, boy, I would not. You are far too skinny and unappetizing for me to even think about eating you. After chuckling for a good few minutes, in which time the earth rumbled with each bark of laughter that escaped its jaws, the dragon deigned to speak again. I merely wanted to meet the partner with whom I'll be fighting alongside from now on. Wah. Issei was understandably confused. Perhaps if he was, smarter, things would be different, but as that was not the case he couldn't put two and two together. What are you saying? Fight with me. Who are you? You should already know who I am. You have used my power several times now. Issei's eyes finally widened in realization. That's right, partner. I am the gauntlet on your arm. You have to wake up now, but let's speak again sometime. Wait. Issei called out to the dragon, his hand raised, but the great creature that appeared before him was already gone, enveloped in darkness. Within the real world, Issei shot up in his bed, his clothing caked to his sweaty body and his breathing heavy. He blinked several times as the light of the morning sun streamed in through the window. After a second or two, he relaxed. It was just a dream. Good morning, eyes. What the? Issei craned his neck to look out the window. And suddenly received a pair of booted feet to his face. Gah! Soaring backwards like some kind of missile, Issei was launched out of his bed. His back hit the wall with a loud thud, and then he slid to the floor, landing on his rump. His nose now bleeding in the real world much like it had the moment before Deepening appeared in his dream, Issei looked up at the ceiling in a daze as a head of spiky blonde hair and a pair of mischievous blue eyes looked down at him. That was absolutely horrible, Issei. You should have been more than capable of dodging that. Naruto shook his head in disappointment and clicked his tongue. It looks like I have much to teach you. After several seconds of silence, Issei had just one thing to say. Catcharp. 11, 12, 13.13. I think I broke my spine. Come on, eyes. Rias urged her pawn to keep exercising. Keep going. Just a few more push-ups and you'll be done. They were in one of the parks that littered the city. This one was closest to Issei's house. Like all parks, this one had a play set for kids, monkey bars, slides, teeter-totters and a swing set, all built within a small lot of sand. Surrounding the sandy lot was a grassy field with trees interspersed throughout. It was a nice place, pristine and possessing a calming, earthy scent. Naruto rather liked the place, as it reminded him of the play parks in Konoha before pain had destroyed it. Currently, Rias was trying to get Issei's physical strength and stamina up in order to make him more powerful. It wasn't working out too well. I don't think I can go on. Eyes groaned, laying on his stomach with his ass sticking up in the air. It was a humiliating position, but the boy didn't seem to care as he panted and tried to greedily suck oxygen into his lungs. Rias sighed from where she sat. Eyes, you need to get stronger. Your abilities as a pawn will become more powerful if your physical strength and stamina are increased. Without being physically capable, your body won't be able to use all its abilities to their full extent. Come on, Arrow Debigame, Naruto said cheerfully from where he was doing his own set of push-ups. By Rias' count, the blonde was already won 156 and had yet to even break out in a sweat. You need to keep going if you wanted to get stronger. You know that old saying. No pain, no gain. Now hop to it. Grr, shut up, you blonde bastard. Issei shouted from where he was laid out. He would have shaken his fist jealously as well, but those currently felt like they were made of lead, so all he could do was glare. Naruto's right. Eyes, Rias' statement caused a large rain cloud to form over the boy's head and begin pouring down on him, soaking his clothes all the way through. The dark, stormy cloud rumbled with thunder and several flashes of light could be seen from within it. No doubt a sign of the boy's depression. The redhead ignored this as she continued speaking while adjusting her backside so she could get more comfortable as the blonde she was sitting on continued doing push-ups with enthusiasm that was eerily reminiscent of a certain green spandex-clad youth freak. It was probably a very good thing Rias did not know of Rock Lee and his equally eccentric Jonin-sensei, made a guy. I know you're trying hard, but it wouldn't hurt to work a little harder. She smiled deviously as a thought occurred to her. Perhaps if you work really hard, I would be willing to give you a reward. Issei stared up at her with wide eyes. Within his mind, images of Rias stripping down and revealing her breasts for his eyes to feast upon bombarded him. A trickle of blood escaped his nose. A second later, Issei is back at it, doing push-ups like a madman on speed. Or like Rock Lee, except with a lot less youth. Rias shook her head. He didn't even allow her to say what the reward would be before he started. As they continued doing push-ups, Rias found herself looking down at the blonde whose back she had decided to sit on when he said his push-ups were getting too easy. He was wearing what looked like a standard pair of school gym clothes, a white shirt with navy blue accents and the Ku Academy emblem on the left breast, white shorts, and a pair of navy blue and white sneakers. She didn't know why he was wearing his warm weather outfit when it was so cold outside, but she wasn't going to complain. The difference between the standard Ku gym clothing and Naruto's was minuscule, but noticeable. The blonde had apparently decided that sleeves were unnecessary, and had thus ripped them off. This exposed the entirety of his arm to the elements. Once more, Rias had to admire her blonde servant's musculature. His arms were incredibly defined. She would even go so far as to say they were completely ripped. Whenever he executed a push-up, she could see his triceps ripple and form the distinctive U shape which earned it the name, horseshoe muscle. Likewise, she could feel the muscles in his back and shoulder blades contracting as he moved, even though this exercise did not work out that muscle much. His physique was just another part of his mystery. No newly minted devil should have those kinds of muscle, and no human should be capable of gaining those kinds of muscle even with muscle enhancers. He had a body that put Olympic sprinters and fitness cover models to shame. They were not just aesthetically pleasing to the eye, they were also incredibly dense. To put it simply, they were muscles designed for the sole purpose of being used in combat. Sculpted through years of the most physically grueling training routines and hardened from incredible amounts of physical abuse. Even the way they flexed and rippled told her that these muscles were created specifically for fighting. That he seemed to have exercised every single muscle in his body, including the ones that couldn't be seen just by looking, only provided her more evidence to support her theory. But why would he need to have muscles like this? How had they been forged? Was he one of those child soldiers she had heard about? Trained since birth in the art of war and killing? Had he needed to face a threat that was so great he put his body through the most grueling paces imaginable in order to face it? Rias had no idea that her last guess was more accurate than she could ever imagine, but she would find out eventually. Sorry I'm late. The two boys stopped what they were doing. All three turned their heads to see Asia running towards them, waving one hand in the air while the other was holding onto a small basket. Like Rias, she was wearing a pink and white track suit with black accents. There was a large smile on her face and it was clear to all three present that she was not watching where she was going. Aiz-san, Naruto-san, Bucho. I'm sorry I'm running la kya. Issei, Naruto, and Rias watched in mute shock as the girl stepped into the sandlot they were using for their daily exercise and tripped. She fell down face first in the dirt. Ouch. That really hurt. While Naruto began snickering, Rias sighed. That girl was the most accident-prone person she had ever met. Catcharp, here you go. Asia held out a small canister filled with tea to Issei. Thank you, Naruto-san. Asia held out the tea out to him next. I'm sorry I don't have an extra cup, but I didn't realize you would be here. But if you like, you can still drink some. I'm fine. Naruto smiled as he reached out and ruffled Asia's hair like an affectionate older brother. The blonde girl pouted from beneath his masculine hand, but it was easy to see she was pleased by the gesture. He had a feeling the former nun was as starved for affection as he had been back in the elemental nations. But thank you anyways. He. Asia giggled, her cheeks flushing with pleasure. Asia, Issei said, glaring at the blonde male. He already had Buku's and Kaneko-chan's affection. There was no way he was going to let the blonde bastard take Asia's too. What are you doing here? Asia blushed and looked demurely at her lap. After hearing about how you were training every day with Bucho-san, I wanted to help you out. But I wasn't able to think of anything I could do except make tea. Sob. Issei wiped his eyes with his sleeve as he began crying manly tears of joy. I can't believe I've finally had some good luck. I must be truly blessed to have a cute girl like you saying such nice things to me. Issei held the cup of steaming liquid with the kind of reverence one usually reserved for praying, or for ramen if your name was Naruto. Asia will make a great wife one day. WWW wife. Asia squeaked, her face steaming. No, that was not an exaggeration. Her face had become so red it looked like someone stuck it in an oven and there was steam pouring out of her ears. Mo. Aiz-san. You shouldn't say such embarrassing things. Naruto was grinning like a loon as he watched Asia accidentally smack Issei across the face with one of her frantically waving arms, sending the boy reeling. He then watched as she squeaked loudly and began apologizing profusely. Even when Issei said something sweet and endearing, things still went wrong for him. It was just too funny. And for some reason, it also reminded him of someone, though he couldn't remember who. Well, he was sure it would come to him eventually. They make a cute couple, don't you think so, Rias, eh? The Cheshire Cat grin left Naruto's face and was replaced with a frown as he looked at the red-haired beauty. He had been expecting to see her smiling at the scene like he was, but that was not the case. Instead, there was only a look of inconceivable sadness in her expression. Scooting closer to Rias, Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, startling the girl out of her thoughts. Naruto. She looked up at him, blinking, as if she had just realized he was there. Naruto's frown grew. Are you all right? Yes. Rias shook her head, her long, luxurious hair getting flung about her face. I'm fine. She smiled at him and Naruto could see how false it was. As the all-time master of fake smiles, the newly turned devil could spot one of those a mile away. It was not one of those small, heartfelt smiles he often saw on her, nor did it reach her eyes like a genuine smile would. Thank you for your concern. You know I'm here for you, right? Naruto told her, sliding his hand down her arm until it was over her hand. If you ever need me for anything, you know, to help with something, or if you just want someone to talk to, I'll be here for you. Rias looked shocked for a moment, then, like rays of light parting through a sea of clouds, a genuine smile appeared on her face. She placed her free hand over the one Naruto had placed on hers. Thank you, Naruto, but I really am all right. She bit her lip, if I ever need you for something, I'll be sure to tell you. Promise. After a moment of thought, Naruto nodded, deciding not to pursue the matter any further. She promised him that if something was wrong, she would tell him. And he was willing to trust her word. After all, unknowing or not, she was the one who gave him a new purpose in life. Catcharp. Naruto was frowning again as he sat on the couch within the occult clubroom. Sitting on his lap was Kaneko, who was eating a banana, surprisingly enough. Naruto felt there was some irony in this, but didn't say anything since Issei was not there to hear it. As always, he was giving the white-haired first year some love, idly caressing and stroking her hair and ears. Despite the fact that she had her mouth full of food, he could hear the purr rumbling in the back of her throat. Of course, she wasn't the reason Naruto was frowning, nor was Akeno, who was standing just a few feet away, smiling in amusement at the two of them as she held an empty tea tray in her hands. The reason he was frowning was Rias, who was staring off into space with the same expression he had seen for the past few days. She wasn't even glaring at him and Kaneko like she usually did when the lithe first year sat on his lap. Not knowing what to do, but needing to do something, anything, to make that look disappear, Naruto gently picked up Kaneko and placed her on the couch. It was an action that got not just the white-haired girl's attention, but also Akeno's. "Why'd you stop?" asked Kaneko. She looked up at him beseechingly. Naruto winced at the look, but his concern for Rias overrode Kaneko's cute factor. "Sorry," Naruto told her softly, "but He looked back over at Rias. Kaneko seemed to understand, even though she looked depressed to know she would not be getting any more pampering. "I want more petting later." Of course, Naruto smiled. Acting on his impulsive nature, something he does more often than not anyways, the former ninja placed a kiss on her forehead. It wasn't much, but it was enough that when he pulled back, Kaneko's cheeks were bright red. Era, Akeno smiled at the scene. Kaneko-chan really is taken in with Kitsune-kun if she's blushing like that. Kaneko glared at her Akeno, but didn't say anything as she went back to eating her banana. It was a very ineffective method of covering up her blush. Naruto walked up to Rias, who was still ignoring everything else as she sat there in her own little world, and moved behind her chair. He felt the red head stiffen at his touch as he placed his hands upon her shoulders. That stiffness soon faded as he began to knead the muscles in her shoulders and neck. Almost as soon as he started messaging her, Rias' posture slumped forward in her seat and a pleased sigh escaped her lips. "What is this for?" she half asked, half moaned. "Nothing really." Naruto frowned as he was forced to accommodate for her movement by raising his arms due to the back of the chair blocking him. It made working her muscles much harder. Their positioning was just not good for giving someone a massage. "I've just noticed that you've been preoccupied lately and thought you could use something to help you relax." "Thank you," Rias said, both for the massage and for not trying to force her to reveal whatever was bothering her. "You're welcome." Naruto frowned as Rias arced her back into his touch, forcing him to once more change the position of his arms. "You know, this really isn't the best place for a massage," he determined. "Why don't we move over to one of the couches?" Rias was agreeable to this and quickly moved over to a couch, where Naruto bid her to lay down. It was a bit small, and Naruto wished they could move to the next room where he knew a bed was kept, but it would be rude to leave the other two like that. Straddling her thighs, Naruto quickly began to work his magic. Deciding to use this moment as an exercise for himself as well as a way to help Rias relieve whatever stress she was dealing with, the blonde began to use his growing chakra sensing abilities to scan her body and figure out where the knots and tension was being built up in her muscles. There were several places that seemed to have the biggest buildup of tension, her lower back and the junction just below her shoulder blades. There were multiple knots that he could sense there, some of which looked like they had been growing larger over time. Were they because of her breasts? He remembered Samui once complaining about back pains. Well, whatever. Time to work out those knots. After probing the areas with the highest concentration of knots, Naruto applied physical pressure to work the knot out. Once he sensed that the knot and muscle tension was gone, he applied chakra to soothe and relax the area. He knew it was working when Rias let out an audible moan of pure, utter contentment, the likes of which would have had Issei blasting straight through a wall from an epic nosebleed. "Where did you learn to do this?" Rias' question was barely audible over the moans of ecstasy that escaped her lips, such was the pleasure she was experiencing. "There's actually a funny story to this," Naruto mused as he used his elbow to rub out one particularly stubborn knot. Rias groaned as the knot gave way, then he let his fingers coast over the area and gently apply chakra, eliciting a near orgasm-inducing moan from the girl whose legs he was straddling. It really was too bad for Issei that he was not here, having been roped into taking Asia out shopping. Too bad for him. Akeno put a hand to her cheek. "I think I'm actually beginning to feel a little jealous of Rias." "Wouldn't you say so, Kone?" Era. The hidden sadist smiled in amusement as she saw Kaneko glaring daggers at Rias. If looks could kill, their king would have been dead several times over. It looked like someone really was jealous. Smiling a bit as he put his hard-earned skills to good use for the first time in a long time, Naruto continued. You remember how I told you about how my godfather was one of the biggest super perverts ever known? Rias was barely able to nod. Akeno and Kaneko perked up at the mention of his godfather. Unlike Rias, who had spoken to him many times after waking up in his bed, which sounded a lot worse than it really was, they knew next to nothing about his past. I think I already mentioned this once, but during a training trip my godfather took me on, he would often spend time in brothels that were located in the towns and cities we went to during our travels. When I started my training trip with him, I was just 12, too young to be allowed to experience any kind of sexual activity, even by his moral code, so I was often left in the hands of one of the younger girls who lived there. It's not well known, but brothels also tend to act as orphanages for young girls on occasion. Usually, these girls are trained to work there once they reach a certain age. Naruto paused for a moment, just to make sure Rias was awake. His massages had been known to put some women to sleep. When she gave a noncommittal nod, he continued. Anyways, one of the girls, who I think at the time was around 16 or so, I can't really remember, decided to teach me how to give massages. The way she said it made it sound like some kind of training, so naturally I needed to learn it. As my godfather and I traveled and went to more brothels, I had the girl watching over me help me get better by giving them massages. Naruto gave a mildly self-depreciating chuckle. Eventually I got so good that when we revisited a town, I had girls practically lining up to receive a massage from me. By this point in time, Naruto had slid all the way down to the end of the couch until his backside was pressed up against the heels of her shoes. He had already finished kneading her tight, firm rear like an expert baker kneads dough. All he needed to do to finish up now was work over her legs. There weren't as many knots in her legs, but he could sense a few in her hamstrings that felt coiled together like a loaded spring. Those required some work to fix up, but it still took less time than her back because they were not as numerous nor as big. As he continued to work, the young, newly reincarnated devil continued to talk. It was only after several seconds, in which time he had started on her calves, that he realized the girl underneath him wasn't replying to anything he said. Looking up from his work, he saw Rias' eyes had closed completely, her mouth was partially open and her breathing deep and even. She had fallen asleep. Huh, Naruto mumbled, scratching the back of his head. I guess I got a little carried away. A tug on his sleeve caused him to look to his left to see Kaneko standing there, an expectant look on her blushing face. I want one of those. Naruto blinked, then grinned sheepishly. Rubbing the back of his head, he said, okay. I can give you a massage too. Just let me put Rias to bed, okay? Era. Naruto and Kaneko both looked up to see Akeno looking at him expectantly as well. She was also rubbing her thighs together in a way that let both of them know her thoughts were probably lewd on the same level as Hyudo Issei. I would also like one of those orgasm-inducing massages, if you don't mind, Kitsune-kun. Naruto sighed, but nodded nonetheless. He still reiterated that he needed to put Rias to bed first and that Kaneko had first dibs on getting a massage from him. This caused Akeno to pout while Kaneko put a hand up and gave a victory sign. Gently carrying Rias in his arms like a newlywed bride, the spiky-haired shinobi made his way into the extra room that contained the large bed. It took a bit of effort, but Naruto managed to work his arms without jostling the girl in them to make a hand seal. A second later, there was another Naruto standing with him. This Naruto walked over to the bed and pulled the covers all the way back before dispelling. The original carefully set the girl in the bed so her head was resting comfortably on the pillow. Now came the hard part. Deciding whether or not he should take off Rias' clothes. She constantly told him that she did not like sleeping with clothes on, and he knew for a fact that she likely would not care if he stripped her naked. At the same time, it felt incredibly rude to strip a girl's clothes off while she was sleeping. It just didn't sit right with him. It was also something Jiraiya would probably do, or Issei, which meant it was something Naruto probably shouldn't do. He was not a pervert. Really, he wasn't. The tightness in his pants had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he had been straddling Rias' gorgeously crafted derriere, or the moans she had offered during the massage, or the way her body had shuddered against his, pushing her tight ass into his increasingly hard arousal in. Okay, so maybe he was a pervert, but if he was, then it was all Jiraiya's fault. Yes, he was not to blame for any bad habits and or lecherous desires he had picked up from journeying with a super pervert for 2.5 years. Not at all. That's his story and he's sticking to it. Shaking his head and trying to rid his mind of his admittedly less than morally righteous thoughts, Naruto moved over to the end of the bed and carefully lifted her left leg. He slid the shoe off her foot, then lifted her other leg and slid that shoe off as well. Taking them both, Naruto placed them by the door and walked back into the main room. He would ask Akeno to undress Rias further since she was a girl and Rias' best friend. Outside in the main room, Naruto saw that Akeno had decided to start arguing with Kaneko about why she should get a massage from him first. And why should you get a massage from Kitsune-kun first? He's always pampering you. Because I said so. Mew, that's not a very good reason. Standing there, listening to the two girls argue, the young man their conversation was about promptly sweat dropped. Maybe giving Rias a massage, catch-up. That night, Naruto lay awake in his bed, unable to sleep. Like usual, he was only wearing a pair of toad print boxers. His arms were stretched out behind his head as he stared up at the off-white ceiling, thinking. He wouldn't say anything because he had promised Rias not to bring it up unless she came to him, but he was really beginning to worry about her. She was not the type of person to space out and forget where she was, yet that was exactly what had happened today, and multiple times to boot. And not just today either. Several times within the past few days Rias had just completely zoned out and forgot everything around her. It was getting to the point where he was tempted to say screw the promise and force the issue out of her. Only his integrity and iron will to follow his Nindo kept him from doing such. That still didn't mean he wasn't worried. A sigh escaped his lips. Turning on his side, Naruto decided he should at least try to get some sleep. He would be no good to Rias and the others if he was tired. Just as he closed his eyes, a bright, red light lit up his room. Eyelids snapped open to reveal blue irises once more. Naruto quickly sat up in his bed just in time to see the magic circle with the Grimoire crest materialize on his floor right before Rias herself appeared before him. She was wearing her school uniform once more, meaning she must have put it back on after Akeno had taken it off her sleeping form. He absently noted that she wasn't wearing any shoes. Rias. Naruto turned his body around so that his feet were dangling off the bed. Is everything all right? Is something wrong? Rias looked at him and Naruto found himself frozen by her gaze. Had he ever seen such desperation in her eyes before? On anyone's before? She marched over to him, not even stopping when she waltzed into his personal space. One hand was used to push him onto the bed so that she could straddle his waist while the other grabbed his hand and smashed it against her right breast. Naruto was so shocked by her actions that he found himself speechless. Naruto, please take me now. Now that got a reaction. What? His eyes gazed up at her, uncomprehending. Had he heard her right? She wanted him to take her virginity. Why? For what reason? And why now when she had not given any sign of wanting him in a sexual manner like this before? Please. Naruto felt his heart lurch at the tone in her voice. It was so desperate, so pained. A part of him was tempted to do as she asked just so he wouldn't have to ever hear such emotions in her voice again. Take my virginity now. For the first time in a long time, Naruto wasn't sure what to do. He had been in many situations before, some which would even leave his club president and king gaping at him. This wasn't even the first time he had been in a situation with a girl asking him to take her virginity. The circumstances had been different, and Shion had not been so desperate when she asked him, but it was still similar. Naruto could feel Rias as she pressed her hot core against his crotch. The heat from her panty-clad mound was causing his own arousal to skyrocket. No doubt she could feel the proof of how aroused he was through his boxers. She proved this to him by grinding herself against him, extracting a moan from them both. Rias. Naruto groaned as the hand she was using to hold his own hand to her boob forced him to squeeze the large mound of flesh. He could feel her panties getting wet with her juices as she continued grinding herself against him. Whether he wanted them to or not, her actions were revving him up like nothing else. Why are you doing this? Shish. Ah. Rias placed a finger to his lips with her free hand. Don't talk. Just take me. Now, please on. For a second, it looked like Naruto was about to do just that. His body was certainly eager to do exactly what Rias asked of him. Even his mind was beginning to cloud over as his desire for the woman on top of him became almost overwhelming. Yet somehow, someway, Naruto found it in him to resist her. He didn't know what it was. Maybe it was because of the words she had used, or perhaps because of the desperation in her eyes and voice, but he knew that he could not go through with this. If he did, he was sure that something bad would happen. Rias, enough, Naruto said, yanking his hand off her boob and pushing himself into a sitting position. His action startled Rias so much that she began to fall backwards and would have fallen off the bed entirely had he not caught her. He placed his hands on her shoulders and looked her in the eye. I don't know what's going on, Rias, but whatever is bothering you, this isn't the answer. Don't you want me? The look Rias gave him was like a punch to the gut. Am I undesirable to you? Of course you're not, Naruto said passionately. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met. Despite the situation, Rias actually blushed at his blatant declaration. Yes, I want you. I want you so badly right now I can hardly stand it. Then why? Naruto took another hit when tears appeared in his king's eyes. They were tears of desperation, of frustration. Naruto suspected, rightly so, that they were caused by more than just his refusal to sleep with her. Why won't you take my virginity? Because I don't want it like this, Naruto growled. I don't want it when you're so desperate to give it away that you're willing to abandon your pride and integrity. I don't want it when you're giving it to me, not as the ultimate expression of love, but because you think it will solve whatever problems you're having. Rias looked stunned by his proclamation. Well and truly stupefied, she seemed incapable of even speaking after his words. It was so odd, hearing such maturity in matters of physical intimacy come from a boy. They were all supposed to be sex-crazed, but then, didn't this just prove that Naruto was not like other boys? Naruto didn't even notice her look. Frustrated tears were welling up in his own eyes. He didn't know what was going on or why Rias was doing this, but the fact that he didn't know what to do to help her hurt. It hurt worse than when he had been unable to bring Sasuke back to Sakura after making her the promise of a lifetime back when he had been a naive fool of a genin. It hurt more than when Sasuke had shoved a Chidori through his chest and tried to break the bond of brotherhood that tied the two of them together as friends. It just plain hurt. Overwhelmed by his own emotions and his need to do something, anything, to help the person who had given him a purpose in life, Naruto pulled the stunned girl into a hug. Rias, now even more shocked, was unable to do anything as her blonde servant pulled her flush against him. Their bodies melded together. Naruto's left arm found itself wrapping around her waist, resting against the small of her back. His right came up to her head, his hand placing itself on the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair as he pulled the startled girl to him. I don't know what's going on, Naruto told her. I don't know why you're acting this way, or why you think I need to take your virginity now, but I promise you, we'll find a way to deal with it. Whatever is bothering you, we'll face it together and overcome it together. Just don't do this. Don't act like this anymore. I hate watching you suffer like this. I hate watching you degrade yourself like this. You're better than this, Rias. Rias did not say anything, still stunned by his proclamation and words. Though he could not see it, her eyes were wide and her mouth was parted in an expression of surprise. After a moment of this, her mind snapped back to the present. She got over her shock. She didn't say anything, but she did respond to his attention. Her own arms came up and wrapped around him. Her face soon found itself in the crook of his neck. There, she inhaled the scent she had become so familiar with, an earthen smell that was mixed with the fragrance of miso and a masculine scent that was distinctly Naruto. It was an unusual combination, no doubt, but it had a calming effect on her mind. As they sat there, Rias straddling Naruto as they held each other so close not even a microscopic organism would be able to fit between their bodies, a silver light erupted from the ground where Rias' magic circle had been just moments before. Naruto reacted without thinking. Sliding out from underneath Rias, he stood protectively in front of her in case whoever was teleporting into his room was an enemy. A kunai appeared within a grasp, which he quickly coated in wind chakra. Moving just as he had done 1,000 times before, Naruto's body slid into a combat stance. His feet slid apart and his knee bent, adopting a wide stance that was better suited towards enclosed spaces. It was a strong stance, designed more for blocking fierce attacks and returning them tenfold than dodging blows and counterattacking. Another kunai appeared in his free hand. His finger looped into the ring with practiced ease and he spun it around until he was gripping it in a reverse-handed grip. Now he was ready. A hand being placed upon his shoulder startled him. "It's okay, Naruto," Rias said softly, sadly. "We're not in danger." "Rias." Naruto relaxed slightly at her words. His head turned around to look at her out of the corner of his eye, but he was soon forced to look back at the circle. A figure appeared before them. It was a very beautiful woman who did not appear to look a day over 20. Lovely-looking lips, a small nose and a delicate chin and cheekbones made the woman look like some kind of noble, yet her demeanor, the cool and professional aura she gave off made Naruto think of a queen, one whose icy personality could freeze all those who met her. Her hair was a startling silver that flickered and shone in the moonlight, flowing all the way down her back and featuring long, blue bows at the ends while the rest was let down, ending in twin braids. Her eyes, he noticed, matched the color of her hair perfectly. Oddly enough, she was wearing what Naruto recognized as a maid outfit. "What the fuck? Do you honestly think that by doing something so degrading your engagement will be called off?" asked the woman. To Naruto, the words were like a physical blow. "I see," he said, closing his eyes as he began putting the pieces of this elusive puzzle together. He would never claim to be that smartest person in the world, but he was not stupid, not anymore. He could see where this was going. "So that's why you asked me to take your virginity." Rias winced at the tone in his voice. "You're engaged to someone I'm guessing you don't like, and thought that if you lose your virginity to someone, whatever contract bound you would be broken. Or maybe you thought this guy would be so repulsed that you would do such a thing that he simply wouldn't want to marry you." Naruto finally looked back at Rias. "Am I right?" Naruto had learned a lot about how marriages between nobles worked, both from Jiraiya and Tsunade. It was something he needed to learn, they said. It would help him for when he wanted to get married, they told him. He was glad he listened to those lectures now, regardless of how boring they had been. "Naruto." She reached out a hand to him. When he took a step back she flinched. Tears sprung to her eyes. "Please don't be mad at me. Please." "I'm not mad." Naruto's eyes softened. "I could never be mad at you. I'm just hurt." Another flinch. "Naruto." "Excuse me," the woman interrupted. "I hate to interrupt." She sure didn't sound like it, but we really must be going. Rias looked like she wanted to protest. Teary teal eyes met Naruto's azure blues. She bit her lip in indecision. I understand." The beautiful young devil with red hair closed her eyes, her face set in a grimace. Upon opening them again, she looked imploringly at the silver-haired woman. "Do you think I could have a moment alone with my servant?" The woman seemed to think on this for a moment before nodding. "That is fine, but please, do not be long." She turned to leave, but Naruto spoke before she could even make a single step towards the door. "You know, it's very poor manners to enter someone's home and not at least give a name," he stated, causing the woman to halt in her tracks. Rias just gaped at him. "If you would be so kind as to at least give me the name of the lovely lady who has intruded upon my home without my permission." Had the situation been different, less somber and demoralizing, Naruto would have grinned. That sounded like something Neji would say. "Naruto," Rias said in trepidation. "I really don't think you should." "You are correct," the maid interrupted, about facing. "It was very rude of me. My apologies." Rias gaped some more. "My name is Gathia Lucifuge," she curtsied to him. "I am a servant of House Grimori and Rias-sama's sister-in-law." "She's my brother's queen," Rias added. "I see." Naruto took a deep breath. Drawing upon those lessons of formality Tsunade had been so insistent on hammering into him sometimes with her fists, he spoke again. "In that case, I welcome you to my home. Any family member of Rias will always be welcome here." "Thank you." Graphia nodded her head. She looked at Rias. "Like I said, try not to linger very long." With that, she walked out, leaving Naruto and Rias alone. "Naruto." Rias looked so unsure of herself. It was completely unlike the strong and self-assured woman he had come to know so well. I wish you would trust me more, Naruto interrupted. Had you told me about your problem beforehand, I could have helped you find a way to break the contract before it got so bad that you felt your only option was for someone to take your virginity. He looked away. I don't think you know how much it hurts to realize that you don't trust me. But I do trust you, Rias shouted, her voice desperately trying to convey her feelings as more tears sprung to her eyes. You're the only one I trust with something like this. If I had wanted to just lose my virginity to get out of this marriage, I could have gone to Issei, but I didn't. I chose you. And yet you didn't trust me enough to tell me about your problems until just now when you were so desperate that you practically threw yourself at me, Naruto replied, to which she had no answer. And somehow, I get the feeling that had Graphia not interfered, you wouldn't have even trusted me enough to tell me why you wanted me to take your virginity in the first place. It's even worse because had you just told me why you wanted me to take your virginity, I would have done it. Ria's shoulders slumped, her body shook and tears leaked out of her eyes and made a trail down her porcelain cheeks like evanescent droplets of crystal that broke when they made contact with the ground. I'm sorry, she whispered despondently. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. There was an acute pain in his chest as he gazed upon this girl. Tears really didn't suit her, he decided. Acting with a boldness he had rarely ever shown in the elemental nations, he closed the distance between them, and once again wrapped her up in a strong embrace. Rias returned the hug with the need of a person who was being tossed into a sea of emotional uncertainty. Her arms wound around him tightly as she pressed her face against his chest, staining his shirt with her tears. Rias, Naruto sighed as he buried his face in her hair. Whatever happens, try not to worry too much. We'll deal with it, together, okay? Her face still pressed tightly against his chest, she gave him a noncommittal nod. Rias-sama, Graphia said as she once more entered the doorway. It's time. Naruto released the hug, forcing her to do the same. Rias looked at Naruto, searching. For what, he didn't know. Go on, he said, nodding towards Graphia. We'll talk more tomorrow. Rias nodded, still unable to speak, overcome as she was with emotions. She walked over to Graphia as a magic circle appeared on the floor underneath the maid's feet. As their bodies began to vanish, Rias finally managed to gain her voice back to leave one last parting comment. I'm sorry, Naruto. Then they were gone. Naruto stared at the spot where Rias and that other devil left. A sigh escaped his lips as he climbed into bed. That night would be the first night since he met Rias that he would sleep alone. He quickly concluded that he did not like sleeping alone anymore. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.